Live and under the lights from iRacing's virtual Bristol Motor Speedway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to RaceSpotTV's coverage of the iRacing Bristol 500. We are happy to have you with us at the Last Great Colosseum, the 10th largest sporting venue in the world. Tonight's plays host to another of the 2022 iRacing NASCAR special events, and we're happy to have you with us for the Bristol night race. Alongside myself, Evan Pasoko, happy to be joined by both Taylor Burris and Joey Tebben in the broadcast booth. Our producer and director downstairs, Tyler Maxson, is bringing us to you this evening, and gentlemen, we are ready to get strapped in and along for a long ride tonight here in Thunder Valley. This will be a race of attrition, excitement, or we'll whittle it down to just one race winner at the end of this one.
We certainly will, and good evening, everyone. This track will definitely test the limits and the endurance of each and every single one of these iRacers who come out here to compete in this special event. Whether it be here in the top split or all the way throughout the week, racing here at Bristol Motor Speedway in these NASCAR Next Gen cars is an absolute workout where drivers are just having to constantly keeping their head on a swivel in order to survive around this circuit.
And getting set to qualify our field in now as we get set for what really is a marathon of a race here tonight. Joey, we're going to be going at it for 500 laps at this virtual Bristol Motor Speedway. And no, the virtual cars aren't going to be 140 degrees, and you're probably not going to lose 10 pounds of sweat like the NASCAR Cup Series guys will. This is a long one, right? But drivers who do these iRacing special events are no strangers to that. You see what's still to come. Of course, a big one this weekend on RaceSpotTV, the Bathurst 1000. Of course, more NASCAR special events later this year with the NASCAR Championship race weekend in Phoenix. Of course, more oval stuff as well with the Chili Bowl. But the way that the laps are configured here at Bristol, you're not going to get many, if any, breaks, opportunities to take a deep breath and stretch if we have green flag racing, because these laps are going to come fast, they're going to come quick, and this is probably one of the most physical oval tracks on the iRacing service.
It isn't. Even under caution, frankly, you're not really getting much of a break. It is just going to be an endurance race, truly. 500 laps, that shakes out to about 266 miles, so it's a very long race. Drivers are going to be in those cars for 3, maybe even 4 hours, depending on how the yellows shake out. It's an endurance race at Bristol at its heart.
And now taking a live look in at that qualifying session, 37 of the top-ranked drivers who are competing in this split of the Bristol 500, ranked, of course, given their numbers in the order of iRating, will qualify in. Track position is typically a good thing at Bristol in terms of, Taylor, you don't want to be in the midfield, right? I think it's inevitable. You both referenced it now. Yellows is going to dictate a big part of this race. You don't want to be in the midfield because naturally that's where it tends to come from early, but I'm not going to say you can't win this race from the back, because there is no way all 37 of these cars make it to the end. So conserving and playing smart is going to be a factor in this race. So curious to see how many drivers want to get up front, stay up front, and how many drivers may opt for a different approach, because unlike other tracks, you can't really just not queue up here and hang out at the back, because qualifying in the 30s means that those leaders are going to be coming up on your bumper pretty quick to lap you if you're back there.
It certainly is, Evan, and this is a track where you have to be balanced about it. Yes, you want to go up there and avoid the big incidents, so the best place to probably be is up towards the front of the field, stay out of the back of the pack. But also you have to realize once you start getting into lap traffic, nowhere is safe for you, so you have to be patient, realize when and when not to fight for position, maybe also when and when not to make a pass on a lap car or a driver who you're getting for position, especially in the early stages of this race here tonight. 500 laps is going to be a testament to see where you can set up the car as the run progresses, because this goes through different stages. Currently, it's a little bit of a early stages of evening hours, and then we're going to progress into full darkness. So this will really go through multiple different changes as we progress to this 500-mile race.
It's like a horror movie. The sun goes down and then nobody is truly safe. You don't know when the accidents are going to come. You don't know when there's going to be a literal wall of cars in front of you that you can do literally nothing about. Of course, like you said, starting up front is always great. Starting at the back, you've got a lot more cars in front of you that can possibly wreck, but nowhere is safe, and every single driver in this field is probably pretty scared about that fact for the next 3 hours.
We always talk, even on shorter races at Bristol, right? Just this past Tuesday, we saw with the drivers of the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, their race here was only 170 laps, and that's still plenty of opportunities to make mistakes. And that what big talking point for that one was, it's a lot of driver versus track. Sure, you're dealing with a lot of traffic, but the racetrack itself is an enemy. 500 laps means that there are 2,000 corner entries or exits in which you could make a mistake. And if you're running an optimum line, that means you're putting yourself within 2 to 3 feet of the wall maximum on corner exit. So 2,000 opportunities to make or mistake, also opportunities to make up some time and find success in one of the biggest of the iRacing special events on the oval calendar. Again, racing from this late afternoon condition into the lights in Thunder Valley, and with that, qualifying has drawn to a close. So let's go trackside and take a look at your iRacing starting grid for the 2022 iRacing Bristol 500. Noah Bitts will start on pole position for this one. He is the number 2 ranked driver. His time of 14:5:22, best of them all. And alongside him, the number 1 seeded driver, Dalton Collins, will line up alongside in second. Then Clayton Hoffman will start third on the inside row number 2 alongside of Joshua Watson. And then you got Timmy Paccioli in 5th and Chris Wilhite, your top 6.
Moving on to the next page, we're going to find Alexander Van de Sant in the 7th position with Brady Quint in 8th position. NASCAR qualifying series competitor Boyd Hogan will be starting in 9th with David Hall rounding out your top 10. Rounding out row 6 will be, of course, none other than Louis Ferrigo and Matthew Long.
And Taylor, we'll be seeing Matthew Long on Sunday night, the Precision Racing League here on Race Spot. But in 13th is Cody Richardson. Matthew Martell lines up 14th. Austin Fitzgerald and Say Bowen are row number 8. And Mike Garaguzzo, we saw him completing a lap a little bit earlier. And Scott Naslund round out the first half of the field here.
Halfway home, you'll find Aaron Kralik at number 19 spot alongside Brooks Durding in 20th. That's looking at your top 10 rows. Mitch Drunowski in 21st alongside with Ronnie Kuritz in 22nd. Corey Boudouin in 23rd. And Justin Campbell going to be P24 in the 24.
25th is going to be Jay Collins with Patrick Leroy in 26th. Wesley Pistol will be in 27th with Jerry LePage in 28th. Thomas O'Hara will be in 29th, and rounding out your top 30 is Jacob Klein.
Then Miguel Bento kicks off the final 7, and 31st, Alan Pahari is 32nd. Nick Nabin, Johnny McNamara, Pedro Enrique, and Steve Richard round out the top 36. But there is one more driver shotgun on the field, a 37-car field here tonight. Neil Phelps will start in that last position. 37 cars here tonight at Bristol.
Going to be bursting at the seams. It is a full house on pit road and in the virtual grandstands, and the field now rolls off of pit road. We talk a little bit more about this virtual Bristol Motor Speedway, the racetrack, a concrete surface, clocking in at 0.533 miles in lengths. That's 0.858 kilometers per lap. 4 corners banked progressively, 26 degrees on the bottom, 30 degrees up on the outside. Even the straightaways, though, still banked progressively from 6 degrees to 10. So there is no relief in sight from the drop of the green flag to the end of this race in about 3 hours from now. And if you're enjoying tonight's coverage and want to get involved and find more information on how you can start your iRacing career, log on to iRacing.com for more information. Lights are out on top of the iRacing official pace car. Again, no shock that the seeded number 1, 2, and even 3 drivers occupy those top 3 spots. What will we see out of Bitts, Collins, and Hoffman tonight? And how can the rest of those other 34 cars play a factor? Pace car going to be down and in this time, and the field is in the hands of the number 2 Chevrolet of Noah Bitts. We're happy that you're spending your evening with us here on RaceSpotTV. Gonna have to wait as the pace car makes that late dive. The 2 car gonna hold to the exit of the restart zone, and we say, let's go racing at Bristol. And clear for the race lead early. Bits gets a handle on things up at the front of the field. Your top 4-5 single file, but plenty of side-by-side through the midfield.
Your first side-by-side action was going to be the battle for fifth between Wilhite and Pacioli, who are now battling singling file right here as they come off of turn number 4 as they work their way back down into turn 1. They're already just logging some incredible lap times, sub 15 seconds almost for some of your competitors as they start to wind themselves up, try to get into the rhythm, find their right groove, and hang on as they work their way back across the start-finish line.
You can see Alex Van de Sande in that purple and white car running a very, very different groove from the cars ahead. But you can see a little bit further back, it seems like, from my perspective here, the high line is really the place to be in this early stint of the race. The number 16, that is Cy Bowen moving his way forward on the top. Van de Sande's making the top work. Top seems very, very strong right now, but as we know, there's a trade-off there. Higher speeds, more wheel in there. You're going to wear those tires down more, but at least in the short stint here, the short run, Top's working out really, really well.
You can see the teal and black number 13 at Joshua Watson on the bottom. The inside not paying dividends to the driver of the number 13 machine, down 4 spots from where he started and more. As now the 27, David Hall gets around on the outside. The 35, Matthew Martell also going to get by. And now the 16 of Cy Bowen wants to get up and in there as well. So Watson really paying for getting pinched down on the inside of the racetrack. Make it down 6 spots now on lap number 8.
Yeah, here in this virtual Bristol Motor Speedway, a lot of people might have been seeing what's happening in the real world, where you see, of course, the drivers utilizing that bottom groove and, of course, to make things run. But, of course, we've been seeing, of course, here recently that there's multiple different grooves that best suit racing here at the virtual Bristol Motor Speedway. Most of it is going to be that middle to top lane. The bottom lane can come into some help in certain points of the run, but right now, the middle and top groove is the place to be.
It is the place to be. Only 10 laps into this race, though. We are, how does that math work? 1/50th of the way through. I think that's 2% of the race through. So 490 laps to go. A lot of time for different grooves to settle in. But right now, you can see the number 32 working that middle groove. And it's working out very, very well so far. Down to the bottom goes the 32 now. He's working different lanes here. He's just trying to find the rhythm here, find the groove. And it looks like it's just all going to shake out in basically dead in the middle of the track here.
Yeah, when you're not in a side-by-side battle, drivers actually going to yield a little bit down to the inside of the racetrack, right? They're not necessarily going to be right up on the wall, but certainly when you're side-by-side, Top's going to get that huge run, utilizing those 30 degrees of banking to your advantage. And you can see as soon as somebody gets stuck down low, they're losing spots, and they immediately want to get up top ASAP. But for the most part, things have spread out a tad bit. You can see a battle for third on the scoring pylon, left-hand side of your screen. The number 30 machine, Brady Quint, just went up a spot. That's a race high P3 for the driver of the 30 car, up 5 from the get-go, and it's because he's taking advantage of the 10 right there. It was Alexander Van de Sande who went backwards in that preferred groove way up on the wall, and that line down low taking advantage, making another spot dropped as Chris Wilhite picks up some change, and he'll take over the number 4 spot. So we've seen top 5 cars struggling down low, and Van de Sande does not want to give up the top despite the fact that it's leaving the inside wide open. Next on deck is Clayton Hoffman down around the inside trying to make the move.
How about the pass for second place for Brady Quinn? He'll move up to P2, getting around Dalton Collins as they work their way through the middle of turn 1 and 2. Now as they're coming out of turn 4, he will clear him and set his sights on race leader Noah Bitt. Brady Quinn, of course, been running some very fast lap times here recently, but I'm just kind of curious, as he's continuing to run, is he using up too much of his stuff here in this early stage? We see now as they're going to go 2 by 2, multiple rows deep here as they work their way back into 1.
Well, using up your stuff early, that seems to be what Dalton Collins has done. He continues to fall back. It is a little bit of a peak for the lead up front, but Alex Van de Sande has been moving forward. Martell has been moving forward. Wilhite has fallen back just a little bit, but Collins has fallen from second down to 5th, and now we see Chris Wilhite right on his tail, and he's likely going to be the next driver to put Collins down in another position. Using that bottom, the driver of the number 95 / the number 1, probably just being a little bit conservative early on. It's not working out for him. You can see him back out extremely early there into turn 1 and essentially just lets Chris Wilhite drive around the outside, but that tells me that this is a little bit of a deliberate conservation effort. This is not from a lack of speed. I think Joshua Collins is doing a little bit of 4D tire saving chess here early in the race.
It's a big part of it. Bristol, when you think of it, not a racetrack that jumps way up on the list of tracks that eat up tires, but it's such a tight radius, so much banking that if you want to push it, you can get a lot out of these race cars early, but you could pay the price later in the run. And obviously these drivers are hoping this race has those long green flag stretches, and therefore they're hoping that they got some tires by the time they get to the end of it. Quint still in second, has been unable to find a way around Bits. It was his very best. Now looking to the inside up front. Bits goes down, shuts the door. I think it may be more a question of when, not if, because Quint clearly the faster of the two of them, but a nice bit of defensive driving from Bits to take away the bottom, and all of a sudden Van de Sant third, not that far back of the P2 car in Brady Quint, and now Quint might feel some pressure from behind to encourage him to go up and fight for the race lead, because that 10 car also on the move.
He certainly is, Evan, as we watch these four vehicles battle for this position for the race lead. Keep an eye also on Matthew Martell, who's right there in that number 21 machine as he works his way through. He's having a good run running that middle groove, keeping pace with your top three as they come across the line. But as they start to continue to progress, we see three different lines used here for your top three. Bit staying to the bottom of the racetrack, Quint running that mid to almost right to that bottom groove, and then you see Van der Sant, who's just running right up against the wall, almost rim riding it in order to try to see if he can get a little bit of momentum off that corner exit. It's working for him at some points, but just due to the fact that some of these drivers are taking the shortest distance around the racetrack, it's actually a little bit more beneficial for them at this point in the race.
I think Alex Van de Sant might be a little bit confused. I think he might think we're running Indy Fixed at Homestead right now, because he is just ripping that wall. It worries me a little bit. I'm worried that he's just going to smack the wall on exit one of the times, but he is absolutely on the limit on the outside there. But we see the first little bit of side-by-side action in quite a while. Willite and Martell here. Top still working. The number 21 looks like he's just going to blow by, but not quite. Willite's fighting back down there in the bottom. This is the first side-by-side action we've seen up front in about 20 laps.
And through on the inside, it goes Willite, so with the number 4 car up and into position number 5. Martell drops down one, but still overall up 8 positions from where he started in this race. So all in all, I think a positive start to this one is your top 3 are trying to pull away just a little bit. I think that was aided by the fact that, well, the battle for P4 seems to constantly be one of the best battles up front. Willite looking for more. He had just gotten around Martell, now wants to get around Bowen in the 16, and you can see them side by side off of 4. It is allowing the trio of Bits, Quint, and Van de Sant to pull about a 1.6 second advantage away from 4th on back.
Looking through as we watch these drivers jockey for position, there you see that battle between, of course, Cy Brown and Willite as they work their way, or Bowen as they work their way through, and side-by-side battle for that 4th position. You got Brooks Dirting right there behind them as well. He's picked up from 20th position all the way to P6, so he has definitely been a driver who's been on the move as they work their way back into the corner. But as these three will start to battle and pick up, they're now going to try to go single file, see what they can do, because they have lost touch to your top 3.
And we're going to have to start thinking about lap traffic here soon. Not immediately. We're still, the back of the pack is still only about 9 seconds. Oh, and Van de Sant's finally in the wall. Van de Sant's finally hit the wall. Has overcooked it a little bit in the entry of 1, and he's finally scraped that wall. He's got a Bristol stripe for the first time tonight.
And I'm sure it'll be the first of many for a lot of drivers in the field. Van de Sant fortunately able to get out of the wall, maintain P2, but it does give Bits now about a half a second cushion up in the race lead. It's the most comfortable he's been for a significant amount of time. Now dropping it back to the battle around position number 10, that number 95, the 1 car on your time and scoring at Alton Collins, going to go from a low to high and get around Corey Boudinot in the 31 machine. So a little bit of a nice move there. Up top now steps right back down to the inside. So Collins obviously comfortable no matter where he puts that number 1 Chevrolet. This time back down on the inside, and he's got a great view of the battle between Matthew Long and Louis Figueroa right now, all stacked up behind that 35 of Martell, who was one of your biggest chargers early in this race. But now that we're 39 laps in, now 40, and Bristol maybe ate up at those tires a tad too much and struggling to hold off this next pack of race cars.
He certainly seems to be struggling. He's trying to work that outside group, but due to the fact of just how much tires have been eaten up, you see Dalton Collins really make some big moves as they head down into the corner, where he's able to pick up a lot of time and gain a lot of momentum off corner exit. As there you see Martel get a little loose off turn 2, but is able to gather it back up before they enter and continue on their way through. And he will lose 2 positions there as we see Martel lose another spot to Matthew Long, who now moves up to P8.
But remember, like 20 laps ago, we were talking about Dalton Collins, how he was just backing up a little bit. He was falling back, deliberately backing off a little bit early, just losing those spots. He fell from 2nd to 10th. And look at what he's doing. He's driving his way back through the order. It's been 1 lap, and he's made up about 4 spots in that little battle. Collins is on the inside here of Figueroa, and there he is. To the inside, he's essentially got 7th place on lock here, and he's going to continue to charge his way forward. I don't think that 2nd place in qualifying was a fluke. I think this is a masterful drive forward, at least early on in this race so far for Collins.
Saw this Tuesday night with the Coke Series. We've seen it all over the service this last week, right? Drivers pushing early, making up the spots, looking hot, and then guys like Collins not willing to push the issue early, saving 45 laps into a run. All of a sudden, they're coming on to blitz the field, and they've got all the momentum in their favor for the second half of the run. Watching this battle between the number 21 and company. Again, not all that far off of the race lead. You can see, look how stacked up this whole group is. This is basically from about 10th or 11th position on back. That 27 to David Hall kind of pacing the field here, and then they're 2 by 2 behind Martel, Hoffman, Watson, Boudot, Hogan, Richardson, Leroy, Naslund. I mean, everybody here from about positions 10 through 23rd within 2 seconds of each other. And there's an onboard look with the Toyota of Boyd Hogan.
Yeah, as we ride on board with Boyd Hogan, the Canadian here, as he works his way through. He was also up inside the top 10, trying to do the same thing that his teammate Dalton Collins did. He's now saved some of his tires now, and he's going to really wall ride it off of the corner turn number 4. Gets right to the inside of, I believe that's going to be Cody Richardson to his outside as he works his way through. Now sets his sights on Boudouin as well as Martel as he's really starting to pick up the pace. He'll look to the inside of Martel to move up another position, and now he's going to be inside the top 15 comfortably, setting his sights for a top 10.
Almost 3 wide a little bit further back. We're really starting to see the difference in the abilities of tire saving of all of these drivers. We're 50 laps in. We're now 10% through this race, and this is when we're starting to see the likes of Joshua Collins, or Dalton Collins rather, who we talked about, working his way forward, and some other drivers who have been struggling, falling back here. And we're seeing how this is evening out. It's clogging up the field a little bit. We're almost 3 wide in some places. The 99 trying to make the top work. You can tell he's struggling just a little bit. And Hall in the 27, he's making the bottom work, but he seems to be struggling a little bit on tires too. We're early in this race, but we're late in the stint. And these tires are really falling off for some of these guys. The 96 almost gets into the wall on the high line.
And what a move from the 7 of Hogan, 3 wide and to the outside, a 2-for-1 special. Going to put Hogan back to where he started this race in 9th, now down it on the inside of Bowen and up to P8. What a move. Boyd Hogan gets 3 spots in a single lap and is able to break free of kind of the big chaotic mid-pack, and has an opportunity to try to drive up to the top 7, but the next car up the road, a 3-second interval until he would be able to get to Matthew Long, who currently sits in position number 7. Again, the roadblock continues here. The 3 of Hoffman going to be clear of the 16, slides up for the inside. That's a position gained. And look at Patrick Leroy here, one of the biggest movers in the field, up 14 spots, looking for more to the outside of the 37. But will that get him stuck in line behind that 16?
So far, it's not going to be the case for him for Bowen, as Patrick Leroy, the 36 car, has also been on quite a bit of a tear. He's picked up multiple spots after starting in 26th position. He's currently your biggest mover of the race, as he's picked up over 10 spots and works his way now over into the front of that lead pack of cars as he will round out your top 10. Really great battling here as we now start to see who are the drivers that are good on the short pace and those who are better for the long game, those long runs, as we have one truck car go loose off in the back straightaway here. think that was the Luis Ferrigno machine of the 32 or 37 machine on these timing and scoring.
Yeah, I think that was Figueroa, the bright red car, but that was another checkup. Bowen in that pure black car with the white numbers. He's just kind of checking up everybody here. I think we've lost Figueroa from the session completely, so I think that might have been terminal damage in the wall. Let's take a look. The 32, that is Luis Figueroa just on the exit. Oh, there's a little bit of contact as well. Definitely not terminal damage.
That's a pretty good save.
On track.
Yeah, I mean, Bristol, you get turned sideways like that off of the corner. You don't normally get away without at least missing the front or the rear clip of the race car. And so that was a really impressive job of saving and slowing down that race car. And Figueroa back on the racetrack, but a lap down right now in 32nd spot. So that's a big break, obviously, to the driver who started in 11th position. But I think 9 times out of 10, you get hooked like that, you get loose like that coming off of the corner. That's nose first. And that safety barrier ain't too soft on the surface. And with the new damage model on these NASCAR Next Gen Cup Series cars, you could have some really terminal damage. And look at that move, big slide down to the inside. It's getting racy here at Battle Around P12.
It certainly is. We see, of course, Garguso trying to hold off to that in that number 9 machine. He'll look to the inside of Cy Bowen for position in 11th. You also have Joshua Watson, Scott Naslin, and, of course, Timmy Pacioli right there in the hunt for these positions here. And, of course, they're closing in to the tail end of the field as our race leaders have already worked through at least into the top 30 and putting them a 1 lap down. So these drivers here are going to have to deal with that same thing here momentarily. And with how they're racing, it's going to get exciting, a little bit dicey in some points of the race here, but it's really going to be an exciting battle to see these drivers duke it out for these few laps here during this run.
And we're going to have to start thinking about green flag pit stops very, very soon here. We're only 66 laps into the stint here, so we've got a little bit of time to go. But if you remember back to other races at Bristol this week, I think it was about lap 75 when drivers were starting to come in, make those green flag pit stops. So about 8 laps time, 10 laps time, something like that, we might see some of the drivers at the back of the field start to come in.
And one thing that we've started to see in the last dozen laps or so is that your race leader, Noah Bitts, who has led every lap tonight, has caught traffic, but caution is out for the first time tonight. They're going to scatter in what looks like turn number 1. And maybe it started with Thomas O'Hara and company. So this one actually happens off of 2 and down the back straightaway. And O'Hara was not the first driver involved. I think we'll have to find the 35 of Matthew Martell and the 15 of Cody Richardson. It was a battle back in the 20s, and it just came down to a little bit of miscommunication, a simple case of not clear on corner exit. And after nearly getting green to the first cycle of pit service, we are indeed under our first yellow. Let's take a look.
Just a little bit of miscommunication from the spotters there. It will collect, of course, the 21 machine of Jerry LePage, who was having such a decent run, but I think he got collected up by another driver. Could not catch who that was, but it was just a miscommunication of the spotters as listening out as everybody's going to be coming down pit road this time.
I think Nick Nabin and Johnny McNamara both got involved in that accident as well. No fault of their own. There's not much room to avoid an incident at Bristol. But like you said, Taylor, everybody coming down pit road here. I think I shouldn't have mentioned green flag pit stops. I think I jinxed that this was about to happen, but no surprise. Bitts comes in, and every single other driver behind him on the lead lap is going to be coming down pit road here. No reason not to. We're essentially to the end of the stint here, and we're basically just going to restart this race as essentially the same as we started it, because Bitts and Collins are back on the front row now. Collins drove his way all the way back to second before that caution came out.
And it's worth noting that we had not really seen anybody come to pit road with the exception of one lapped car before that, right? We were on the doorstep of seeing the pit service, but it really hadn't taken hold. So there's not a significant amount of drivers trapped off of the lead lap. And for the cars who had gotten lapped by Bitts as he wins the race off pit road, they don't really have the chance here to stay out and look for a wave by because they need fuel. They are essentially at the maximum extent of this fuel run. It's going to be pretty, expected service. 4 tires, fuel for everybody. Bitts had the #1 pit stall. He was first in and he was first out. Worth noting, though, that this Bristol Motor Speedway has pit road divided into 2 halves, right? There's a pit lane on the front stretch. You can see cars getting service there. And then as they exit, there's also a pit lane down on the back straightaway. The pit road here operates, though, as 1 pit road on these current rules. So what that means is both drivers, no matter where you're pitting, you have to drive down the full length of pit road, essentially entering off of 2 and then exiting off of turn #1. So not a huge factor under the yellow, but that single pit road could be a factor if we do see green flag service tonight.
It certainly can, because, of course, for those who are maybe towards the back half of the field here, they have that early pit box where they can really just get to their pit box and then, of course, have to just go around the entire pit road in order to rejoin the racing circuit. Another thing to keep in mind as well is also that pit exit section. Of course, you got to make sure you stay below that blue line and blue cone before you come around and rejoin the racing service. Otherwise, you will receive a penalty. Under caution may not be as big of a deal, but of course, if we get some green flag runs later tonight, that could be a big issue where we could see some penalties given out.
And that's always critical. Green flag pit stops aren't always the thing you think to practice. In practice, you think, if they come, they come. But you've got to practice green flag pit stops. I know every single time I run an official race, I know I run a league race that has green flag pit stops, and I don't practice a green flag pit stop beforehand, I inevitably screw it up. I get a penalty, I throw it away. But we're going back green here either way.
Well executed for Bitts up front, so no change. He's able to control this race, and now a peek to the inside, a little bit further behind. Sees the 10 car, Van de Sande up top, and Matthew Long trying to get underneath the number 99, the 30, just a couple of steps off that battle as they race down the front stretch and off and into turn #1. So most of your top 10 single file early, but second time in a row we've seen Van de Sande stay committed regardless of the pressure down low to the outside line.
He really is committed to that outside line, and I think as time progresses, that outside line could be the favorable groove for some of our competitors that can make up some time. Here right now, he's just showing a little bit of patience, working in the groove, trying to get a little bit more rubber built up on that outside lane to keep on with this position. He's still staying competitive inside the top 10. He may lose a couple of spots here, but is going to stay comfortably, though, inside that top 10 with everything going on now, as we see also Brady Quinn taking the middle wide or middle arc in that middle of the corner and then dives it back to the bottom of the racetrack here. You see it right there, as now we see Van der Sande try to get a good run off corner exit, not able to make it work. You got Brooks Dirting right there behind, watching in 7th position.
And I've been giving Alex Van de Sande all the credit for the outside, but look at Boudinot on the outside. He just passed about 5 cars in the space of a lap. Van de Sande has the outside figured out, but Boudinot, that was incredible. 1 lap, up about 5 spots. Leroy makes it work on the outside as well. That was just a masterful lap by Boudinot, and now he's brought it back down to the bottom. So that number 31 car, that car is strong in multiple grooves here. That's pretty scary if he can drive his way through the field.
And something that's hard to do. If you get a race car that works on both the inside and the outside of the racetrack, it's going to feel good. And I know Boudinot not happy the fact that he started this race back in 23rd, but he is now your second biggest mover, up 15 after completing that pass. And a lot of drivers that he had to get by are in all of this. Look at this mess from 14th on back. Richardson and Hogan side by side. The 15 of Richardson clears on the top, and looks like so will that 27 of David Hall. So inside, not cooking for Hogan, down 2 spots that lap. The number 28 of Miguel Bento trying to get through on the outside as well. The 7 car will do so right there in the dark blue colors, yellow numbers. Number 28 on the scoring pylon as well, and he's making some progress too. So while your race leaders have been pretty unaffected by the initial start and this restart, able to spread out pretty quickly, it should not be a shock that it's the midfield where all the chaos is. This is why we talked about it before the green flag, the fact that qualifying isn't to make or break in a race that's this long, but a midfield Q spot means that it puts you in the middle of this mess, and you have to work so much harder, Taylor, when you're in a battle like this compared to when you're just single filed out.
You certainly are, and that's going to cause a lot of more wear and tear on those tires. That's going to cause a lot more wear and tear on yourself. As we see here, this is where you're just got to figure out where you want to set your car and run your race here, especially this early on. We're not even a fifth of the way through tonight's race, and drivers are already making small mistakes and also really just pushing it. We're going to go 3 wide through the middle of turn 3 and 4 briefly, gathers it back up to make it 2 wide for multiple different drivers here. But that's going to be the critical thing, is making sure you bide your time. And we see that with several other cars out there on the circuit, such as Boyd Hogan, Dalton Collins. Also, we see that with a couple of other drivers out there as well. Now, I think Brady Quint's another one of those drivers who now realize, hey, I need to conserve my stuff and not go run it out early on.
26 looks to be completely out of trouble here. He's going to pull off down to the bottom. I believe that was actually a lapped car. That was Pedro Enrique. He's already a lap down, so he's just getting out of the way. But we're 3 wide on exit. Garaguzzo, Pistoli, and Boyd Hogan around the outside. That, again, 3 wide this early on in the stint. It always worries me, but it's been some pretty clean racing here in the middle of the pack. They've been giving each other just enough room. There's been a few scary moments. Jay Collins was one a little bit earlier, but he managed to save it, and it's been remarkably clean, even with that 1 yellow. And why do I even say anything? I should not have said anything. It looks like that's Leroy around, and
it's 2,
that's
man.
my lesson. Don't mention yellows.
2 in a row. Race Control's going to park you soon. The issue is with Brooks dirtying. The 12 car was sideways right in front of the battle that we were watching. So everybody had to very drastically check up in that run down to turn number 3. So this incident happened the same spot as the last one, and that almost looked exactly identical. I don't know if dirtying thought he was clear, Taylor, or just got a little bit loose, but just came way up. And well, Patrick Leroy was there, drove him into the outside wall. The 27 machine trying to get by on the inside. David Hall gets a little bit of damage, and 2 yellows for 2 incidents in turn 2.
Yeah, just you saw that there. I mean, just a miscommunication of spotters here tonight and this early on, and that's going to be a big thing, especially when you're coming off corner exit. You feel like maybe you have a good enough run to where you could slide up in front, but also you got to throw in the factor that that outside lane can also help propel you and get yourself a good run on that outside lane to where you could just maybe barely have your nose to the outside of your competitor, and he does not realize it until it's too late.
It's interesting. We haven't really done an especially long stint here. We've only been on these tires for 19 laps total, and that's including a few caution laps before the restart. But lots of drivers bringing it back down pit road. Bitts is going to lead them down pit road. We've only done 19 laps of the stint. Looks like Mitch Drunowski is going to be the only one to stay out, and he was a lap down, I believe. So he's just getting his lap back. So again, everybody on the lead lap in the lead pack back down pit road here. Short stint, but clearly they think they've got enough tires in the tank for the next 400 laps that you don't really need to worry about it.
And a good attempt there to get the race lead off of pit road from Dalton Collins. However, Noah Bitts, again, the #1 pit stall is so effective here at Bristol because that timing line is quite literally right at the edge of the box for the 2 cars. So Bitts is able to defend, no changes there. Also, no real swings in the strategy. We had previously seen about a 70-lap run. This time, much shorter, just shy of 20. Either case, the decision continues to be 4 tires and fuel as we close in on 1/5 of the way in to this iRacing Bristol 500. And again, you mentioned for Drunowski, who stayed out to get his lap back, he now comes down to the pit lane for service. A couple of other lapped cars also down and in. We have 31 of the 37 cars who started this race on the lead lap, but at least at the moment, nobody has gone to the garage tonight. Steve Richards, Pedro Henrique are both, I should say, 1 lap down. Patrick Leroy now falling a lap down as well in 34th. Jacob Klein is 2 laps down in 35th. Ronnie Kuritz is 9 laps down, 36th position. And then Aaron Kralik minus 16 laps in 37th. So those drivers, especially for the ones down 1 or 2, they can fight their way back into this race. But for nearly being 100 laps in and having everybody in the field still on track, is quite impressive. Those wave around cars going to be passed by the pace car. Lights are out, and we'll see what Noah Bitz can do for the inside of the front row for this restart. Going to put 97 laps behind us. He has led every single lap so far tonight.
Talk about a great run for him. It's going to be exciting to see what they can do on this restart. And Noah Bitz gets a great jump on the field over Dalton Collins. They slide into positions as they're going to go 2 by 2, couple of rows deep. And then now they work their way off turn number 2 down the back straightaway, now jockeying for position to set themselves up to hopefully get another long run in.
Van de Sant's been forced onto the bottom in the purple and white car. This is unfamiliar territory for him, but he's been forced down there only for a little bit. The door opens, Brady Quint behind lets him get back to the top, and what do you know? It's back up in his familiar top lane. So he is not going to give that up, but think about that later on in the race. If Alex Van de Sant is in the fight for the win here, you might have to force him down to the bottom. He loves that top. He's been making it work, and you know he's been making it work. Does he know how to use the bottom? Does he know how to run the bottom quickly? You don't know, so you might as well put him off his game and force him down there. But that's stuff for about 350 laps from now if you're fighting with him for the win.
Certainly he is.
And look at that 30. I mean, Quint is trying to get down and underneath Van de Sant, but that run off of the outside line has prevented it for the most part. Quint going to get right alongside now, and they'll go side by side off into 1 and 2 with the number 31. A bit watching it from behind, but outside pays dividends, and now he'll back up to the rear end of the number 8 machine of Matthew Long, who tried to get around Will Height, can't do it, so Chris Wilhite defends for the number 3 position, back down on the inside of the racetrack, and no surprise, first car up top is the 10. Van de Sant has been consistently one of the cars in the top 5, in the top 10 tonight. A lot of drivers who started there have struggled. We've seen Pacioli drop back, we've seen Hoffman drop back, but not the case for Van de Sant. Very consistent in the opening 100.
He certainly has, Evan, as we watch him work that outside lane. He's battling with Brady Quinn for that 5th position and having a great run utilizing that top side lane. How about Corey Bodinot as well? He's also now going to go up to the top side of the racetrack and try to stay in the tire tracks. Throw in also Miguel Bento as well. Those three going to utilize that outside lane, try to get some momentum and some close quarter contact between Bento and I believe that's going to be the 27 machine of David Hall, who made slight contact.
Boudinot and Van de Sant have been top line buddies, but like I mentioned last time we were seeing this charge forward by Corey, he's able to make the bottom work too. He peaked down there. He's been able to get a pretty decent run, but early on in the run, Van de Sant's still able to just get that better momentum off the exit and stay ahead. But Boudinot is a very, very scary driver right now. I think that qualifying position was not really indicative of his actual pace. He's been driving his way forward on every single one of these restarts and every single one of these long runs. He started this stint in 8th. He's already up to 5th. He's made the top and the bottom work. Number 34 or number 31 on your timing screen. This is the scariest car in the race right now. He's got to be in with a threat for the win.
Got to be up there in terms of cars passed as well, just as far as all the positions he's had to be able to pick up off of the restarts and such. Your biggest mover overall is Miguel Bento, up 24 positions, having started 31st, running in the number 7 spot. So he's right there as well, directly behind the number 28, or 28 I should say, is directly behind that number 31 machine, Boudinot. So you got a lot of heavy hitters creeping their way into the top 10, but we just have not seen somebody be able to figure out bits tonight, guys. He has led every lap so far, make it 111 laps led for Bits. Collins has consistently been there in second, but we are not seeing Bits pull out to that huge advantage like he did on the first run and like he did to a lesser extent on the second run. So maybe as this race gets deeper into the night, you can see the sun now all the way gone behind the grandstands, and we are full on night racing in Bristol, Tennessee. Maybe those other drivers have had opportunities with those trips down pit road to make adjustments, and they'll have another one. Yellow flag is out for the 3rd time.
Looks like to be Brady Quint involved in this incident as he loops it around and having such a good run. Some damage to the nose of that number 30 Ford Mustang.
Didn't see what caused that. Oh, it's exactly the same thing almost. On the exit of 2, just a little bit of contact with the 22. And unlike Luis Figueira, last time this sort of incident happened, he wasn't able to save it, just nose first into the wall. I saw it in the background of my screen, and That's very, very heavy damage. And that's a shame because Brady Quint was a very, very strong driver in the first 115 laps of this race, 114 laps of this race, but that's going to be heavy damage. You never want nose damage in one of these next-gen cars. If you get a little bit of rear-end damage, especially at Bristol, you can kind of shake that off. You can make it work. But when you go nose first into the wall at Bristol, your next 400 laps are probably going to be a little bit painful.
It was tough for him. Fortunate to get away with that one was Scott Naslund, right? The other incidents we've seen. What is happening under yellow?
He tried to dummy him into the pits, and he ends up getting turned across Collins's nose. He wrecked himself under caution.
Bits had faked it out, came down pit road, and then decided to pull out at the last moment, but turned directly into Dalton Collins, who then got turned into the outside wall. And what on earth? You see it there now. See that yellow line? In NASCAR Cup Series competition, once you pass that yellow line with the orange box, you are essentially on pit road. You cannot come back up. On the service, though, that commitment line is not to that green cone, bottom right corner of your screen there. So the exit was, in theory, legal, but you can't just come up over a car on the surface, and I don't see how that's anybody but Bitts' fault there.
But he's still going to get the lead here, Taylor. So we talked about him being dominant. He goes from hero to zero, and now he's back out front again. But my question is, does he have damage from that little kerfluffle? It was a pretty low-speed accident, but he can't be scot-free here.
I'm looking over at the nose right now. A little bit of a small crinkle to the nose of that number 2 Chevrolet. But, I mean, that's definitely a moment where you have to scratch your head and wonder, why would you do something like that? I mean, especially this early on in the race.
He had been up front the entire time. I think obviously did not want to yield to Dalton Collins there, right? And have a difference between those two. It would have been very big if those two fastest cars in the race had been on split strategy calls. But I think you just got to be cleaner with that decision. So he jumps up, and the question is now is what will the front end damage, if any, that the number 2 machine sustained in that, will that affect Bitts at all, right? He gets his track position back, which is one thing. Through the chaos, though, Collins is indeed credited with leading a lap, so the shutout has been denied. I'm just worried if the number 2 car got any front end damage. Visually passes the eye test, but it did seem like a pretty heavy hit for being under the yellow.
We'll have to keep progress and track of that number 2 machine to see if he can be able to still keep racing some decent runs with that damage. Possibly a little bit of a crinkle I see to this front spoiler right there on the nose. So it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how that'll work.
Lights out on top of the base car, off it in. Let's see what Collins and Bitts can do for the 3rd time. Green flag back in the air, and it is the jump on the inside. Bitts to the race lead comfortably, and again Collins slides in second. Battle's going to be for 3rd and 4th.
Look at Budin, though, on the high side again on these restarts. He's just incredible up there. He blasts around Van de Sande. He's going to blast around Matthew Long, and he's going to blast around Willite, too. Not quite, but give him a lap or two, and he's going to be up into 3rd. And you can see Collins to the inside of Bitts as well. If there is bits and pieces of front-end damage on that car, they're going to show themselves on the short straights here, but he's been able to hang on there. Collins not able to get to the inside, but you got to think Bitts is a little bit rattled. He's lucky to get away with that. He's lucky to still be in the lead, but I don't think Collins is going to be too happy with the driver who turned across his nose either.
So the Ted machine doing his best to defend that outside line. The staunch supporter of it continues to inch further and further up the running order, but now see a challenge from Bento down on the inside. Further up the road, the battle's going to be for 2nd, and Boudneau up top going to be able to get around as the yellow comes out. So new race leader, just as we see yellow flag number 4 and Brady Quint in front of the field up against the outside wall. And for the first time tonight, guys, it didn't happen in 2, and I think Quint may have just lost this one on his own when he was running a lap down in 31st.
Yeah, a tough break for Brady Quint. He was one of our top 5 runners in that first 100 lap run, and now he is just fallen all the way back to pretty much 33rd position now. We'll take a look and see what happened to him as he works down a front straightaway, just loses it off turn 4 and just has to couldn't gather it back up, makes slight contact to the outside wall. But unfortunately for Brady Quinn, his night is not looking the way it's wanting to be.
It's kind of an awkward transition off of 4 there, and that can catch you out. It hasn't really caught anybody out tonight, but I think that might have been, if I'm going to have diagnosed that, I think that might have been helped a little bit by the fact that Brady Quinn likely has heavy damage. So the suspension on that car might be a little bit screwed up. It might be a little bit more wiggly than he would like, but the mighty Quint, he's still out there. He's still staying out. He's going to get his lap back, but everybody else in the field is going to come down pit road here.
And it's interesting because we just saw Boudreaux go to the race lead. You don't see him on your screen now because he is the last pit stall on the other half of pit road, having started this race in 23rd. So his service is already complete, and he is now driving around the apron in 3 and 4, while the rest of the race leaders just entering their pit boxes down by turn number 1. So you see your number 1 qualifier in this race, Noah Bates, Dalton Collins, all right there. But here comes Boudreaux on the left-hand side of the screen on the far side of pit road. Who wins the race off? Boudreaux going to lose 3 spots total, and it'll be Bitts retaking the race lead. That came down solely to that grid position, and therefore the pit road that they had been assigned, guys, he came in as the leader. He will leave as 4th.
Talk about a tough break right there for him as well, but we do have several cars that stayed out on the racetrack, at least 10 cars that decided to stay out, from, of course, Wesley Pistol to Justin Campbell, who decided to come down pit road. So it's going to be Thomas O'Hara who will be it. So 9 cars deciding to stay out on the circuit.
And you can see the kind of stratification of tire ages here. That's going to make this restart very, very interesting. Pistol, Dranowski, Bowen, Fitzgerald, and LePage, they're on the oldest tires of anybody. Then Hogan, Figuera, Nabin, and O'Hara. They've only been on those tires for 10 laps or so, so they're going to be stronger than the drivers ahead. Everybody who just came down pit road is going to be even stronger than both of them ahead. We've seen cautions breed cautions. I know I'm not supposed to say the C word after what I've done earlier tonight, but I'm just worried about everybody meeting in the middle here. Older tires, slightly less old tires, and then even less old tires. They're all going to meet in the middle in a very densely packed part of the field.
And first time we've really seen this much tonight, right? You mentioned the cars on the not-so-old tires, being Hogan, Figuera, Nabin, and O'Hara. Those are the drivers who pitted on the last yellow when we spent the time talking about Bitts and company crashing into each other. So up until recently, it was wholesale service. Everybody would come in. Everybody would go for 4 tires. This will be the first time we see how cars on different tires line up. You would think 4 tires going to be the better decision, but by how much? Because maybe you have the ability early in this race, first couple of stops, to not really have to worry about saving any sets of tires for later in the race and just take your 4. And then once the yellows start adding up, caution 4, caution 5, and you're making your 3rd and 4th trip down to pit road, you need to start thinking, how many sets of tires do I really want to use up on lap number 129 of a 500 lap race here at Bristol? So for the first time tonight, it'll be Wesley Pistol in control of the field on the inside, and it'll be Mitch Drudowski up top on the number 2 position. The freshest of tires, Noah Bitts from 10th position on back. But let's see what the number 11 Tennessee Ford Mustang can do. Green flag back in the air.
Oh, big loose for Boudreaux. Off 2 down the back straight. That is such a shame for the strongest car in the race, and he's going all the way back to where he qualified now.
And side by side for the lead, Drudowski trying to make the move at the inside of Pistol, can't do it. And now Bowen in the 16 going to take the outside and drives up to P2.
Bowen having a great run here during this stage of the race. Decided to save some tires, not utilize them here, but as we keep an eye on our former race leader of Noah Bitts, he is in 6th position. He'll dive to the inside of Boyd Hogan for that 5th spot as they come out of turn number 4, then sets his sights on the top 4 ahead of him. Chris Wilhite right behind him.
Van de Sant still trying to make the top work. Collins has not had a very good restart. He's essentially where he started. Everybody else on those same age tires has been driving their way forward. Van de Sant, Willite, Bitts, but Collins is just kind of stuck in traffic behind Figueroa. And still, those drivers on 41, 40-lap-old tires, they're holding off remarkably well here. Pistol, Bowen, Fitzgerald, who you just saw in the 25, and then Drunowski. But now Bitts gets to the back of Drunowski, gets to the inside of the number 5, and I imagine it'll be pretty easy pickings for Bitts here, but at least early on in this stint, that wall of 40-lap-old tire runners, they've done a pretty solid job here of holding it out and preventing any real chaos.
And Bitts is also doing a good job of being somewhat disciplined here, right? I mean, could really bonsai it into the corner, probably make it stick if he wants, but he knows long run, he's got the upper hand if this stint can stretch out. So there's also no reason for him to do what we saw from some other drivers, right? Early in the race, especially on that first stint, go really hard and then burn it up too quick right there. Could have forced the issue on Fitzgerald, instead waited, set him up on the straightaway, clears him that time in the run through 3 and 4. The number 4 machine of Wilhite's going to follow him through, but credit to not only the slower cars for not trying to throw unrealistic blocks, and credit to the cars on fresh tires for being smart about the charge through the field. The fresh rubber has made its way to 3rd. How long till it gets all the way to the top of the scoring pylon?
That's going to be critical to see. Currently, right now, your car, one of the cars that has the earliest and newest, freshest tires is Noah Bitts. He's up to P3. We'll see how long he can be able to work his way up before those tires start to balance out and even themselves out as we watch Dalton Collins just in a hornet's nest of other vehicles around him as he tries to claw his way back into the top 10. He's now almost about to drop out of the top 15 as Scott Naslin will now go to his outside.
And he's going to be so frustrated right now because he has the same speed as Bitts. He was racing him for the win, and he's just getting stuck behind these slower cars, these older tire runners at exactly the wrong spots. He had a run on, I believe, Hall a little bit earlier, but he just got completely blocked in. He got completely boxed in. I don't think this is what we saw earlier on in the race. I don't think he's really backing up here and just waiting for the long run. He's just getting boxed in now. He's got more speed in this car, and all he can do now is just wait for the holes to open, wait for everything to kind of stratify out one by one so he can get a wider, more open line to drive his way to the front. But right now, this is the most frustrated that Dalton Collins has been all night, I'm sure.
He's just unable to get that bite and find the way through like Bitts, Wilhite, and Van de Sant have been able to. And, you know, the perennial P2 runner tonight has been fast, had been apparently improving and catching bits as the night went on. But, again, that change there for positions and the traffic, the lines that they got set up on for the restart have played a major effect in separating those two. The battle for the race lead heating up, though, up front. Bitts is finally going to try to go for it, looking to the inside of Bowen, trying to maintain, gets a nose in front now, and side by side for the race lead in 1 and 2. And the 16 set up well. That's going to be a really good defensive line. How difficult will he make it for Noah Bitts on the inside?
He's going to fight him pretty well for that race lead, but it's just going to be a matter of who has the better tires. Of course, Noah Bitts has been the fastest car all night long for the most part here, as he will dive into the inside of Cy Bowen for position as they still stay side by side. Bowen with that outside momentum is really going to be able to help propel him. And how about Alexander Van der Sant? He's now into the mix once again as he tries to wall ride it here as we go on board with him.
Bowen was kind of a rock on the high line. He was kind of clogging everything up in the original stint, the first stint of this race, but right now he's doing a remarkable job of just holding it up there on 40, 30-something lap older tires than everybody else. He's doing a great job of just holding his line, holding his speed. Maybe he's done a better job of saving these tires on the stint than the previous one, but it's also going to be very, very frustrating for Van de Sant. If he was much slower, Van de Sant could just drive by him, but on the top, Chris Willite was able to get by on the bottom. On the top, Van de Sant has a very large black next-gen car that he can't get by. Now Bowen's finally going to make it down to the bottom. Now it should be a little bit more easy pickings for Van de Sant. But again, it's just that frustration early on in the run. You want to pass a car that's on 30 lap older tires. You're so very obviously faster than them, but passes at Bristol, you got to work for them no matter what.
And what we're going to see on this run is as these fresher tires get to the front of the field and those slower cars drop a little bit further and further back, your lead lap cars may catch lap traffic sooner than they had earlier in the race, right? That was a big thing we talked about, and I was impressed with how tight the field was on that first long green flag run of the night. Your race leader at that moment, Bits, had only gotten around about 3 or 4 lapped cars before we got to the yellow that happened at lap number 70. Might happen a bit quicker on this run, but you can see Van de Sant sticking to the outside and again has been consistently in the top 10 when other cars have been unable to maintain. We've seen comers, we've seen goers. Van de Sant, you know exactly where to find the 10 and is trying to get up there, but further back you see some more side-by-side action off it into turns numbers 1 and 2 down at the far end of the racetrack there, now headed down the back straightaway. The number 95 in company, racing side by side. There's the Tennessee number 11, Wesley Pistol up top, and restarted off of the most recent restart as the control car. Slip it back, has Louis Figueroa down it underneath, and almost a touch there as they both kind of leaned into each other on corner exit, and talk about a close call as the 11 continues to slip, and there's Dalton Collins losing patience, getting aggressive, trying to get around the 37.
He will complete that pass as they work their way down into turn 3 and 4 as he tries to slide up, couldn't make it work, gets a little bit of a bobble right there. That's going to open up the door for Figueroa in that number 37, along with also Matthew Long, to see what they can do to try to get back around him, but not to the avail this time, as we now see Dalton Collins back into the top 10 a lot longer than what he was probably expecting to be, but now sets his sights on Scott Naslin in the Matt Sim racing machine.
And now, can he charge his way forward the same way he was before as he used up his stuff in that frustrating hornet's nest a little bit further back? Clearly, Bowen has used up some of his stuff with a huge slide, and who's going to be coming up to him next? It's Collins, of course. It all evens out. So Collins, his drive forward through the field should be a little bit easier for the next couple of cars, but he's been doing a lot of work in traffic here. He's been doing a lot of passing. He's been doing a lot of moving. And that's not the way to save the tires that he was able to do in that original stint. But he is going to get by Bowen fairly easy here. Bowen almost loses it and takes him out. That number 99/number 16 car, that car's getting very loose. Again, he does it off turn 4. Long does as well. These cars are getting very, very wiggly under the lights.
It's what you like to see as we complete now 163 laps tonight and kind of get into the middle portion of this Bristol 500 where we're really going to start to see that attrition. Can you keep that mental focus sharp? Can you continue to hit your marks lap after lap after lap? I reference it off at the top. Tonight's race going to have 2,000 different corner entries or exits. If you make it the scheduled distance, good luck not missing it once or twice, and with how tight the midfield portion of the field is running, missing it once or twice means dropping a handful of positions. Austin Fitzgerald still the lead car in this group up on the outside. That's the number 25 car, and they're on the inside. Scott Naslin clear and through in the battle for position number 8, and once he breaks free of the side-by-side battle, he takes off using that racetrack to his advantage. Next challenger, Cody Richardson on the inside, also going to get around Fitzgerald.
Yeah, really great run here as we go back up to the race lead as Noah Bitts and Chris Wilhite will try to lead the charge now. Of course, Alexander Van der Sant was stuck on the bottom, has been able to stay inside the top 3 with Miguel Bento right there behind as Dalton Collins has broken back into the top 5 once again and has a little bit of work to do, but is definitely one of your hard chargers. He backs at the fastest lap out of your top 10 drivers last time by.
Willite, I think, is the driver to watch here in the number 4 as we look a little bit further back to the first real side-by-side action. Again, Fitzgerald is just falling back a little bit. Dirting's going to be the next one through. Bowen's falling back as well. Jay Collins, the other Collins, we saw him get really, really loose early. He didn't bring out one of the cautions, but he had a very, very scary moment to go back to the field. He's been doing a very good job tonight as well. So it's been a great night to be a driver named Collins. Dalton Collins and Jay Collins both just driving their way through the field here. The Hornet's nest back here is not giving up the 33, passing everybody on the high side. McNamara, who was involved in one of the early cautions as well, driving his way through the field. We're really just proving here that this is a very, very long race. If you were involved in one of those cautions and lap 50, lap 80, whatever, there's still triple digits of laps left to go, and anything can happen. There's a lot of great recoveries going on right now.
A long way to go still in this one. You see that number 7 machine right there. That is Miguel Bento, number 28 on your time and in scoring, 4th on track right now, able to break free of the group that sees the challengers chasing him. You got Dalton Collins as reference there, Matthew Long, Justin Campbell, David Halls did a good job of kind of funning back after falling through traffic. He's just behind this trio that we're looking at now. This trio, though, unable to get up to the top 3. Let's see what happened with Cody Richardson. Take a look back to the driver of the 15 machine, close it in on the 22, and I think what happened there, guys, was he wanted to go high on the 22, and when that car blocked that lane, he really tried to give it a little bit too much wheel. The car was pointed to go off the corner high, and you can't really just decide, Taylor, when the car is already strung up like that, I'm just going to give it more wheel and try to slice to the bottom. Gave it a little bit too much input, and that's how that car got loose and into the inside.
Yeah, these cars are a lot more difficult to drive compared to our Gen 6 counterparts. We've been seeing that all season long here, and drivers are having to just be careful with that input. I mean, these cars are a lot more quicker as far as getting into the corner, and so you have to be careful of how you set up that pass, as well as also how you set up your car for entering into a corner like that. And of course, for him, we saw he paid the price.
It's just so oh, even more contact in the back. The 86 almost gets turned. You can see Bowen is one of those drivers who's really, really struggling. And that's another thing that's difficult in any stock car, but especially in this next-gen car. When you get loose like that, when you start sliding around, it is so difficult, especially at a place like Bristol, to cool those tires down, to get back in the rhythm. Because like we talked about in pre-race, you're always turning, you're always moving, you're always doing something with the wheel. So if you want to cool those tires down, you can't do it, essentially. You've just got to figure out a way to back off while still fighting for your life at Bristol. And does that sound easy? No, not at all.
Hey, that's the fun part, right? Not only are you doing 500 laps at a tricky track like this, but you're also trying to decide how to make the moves work, how to interact with traffic, sometimes on equal, sometimes on different tires than you, and set up passes, look for slower lapped cars, maintain your tires, keep track of who's where, who's fighting you for position. Yeah, sure, sounds like a walk in the park. Continue to watch now closer to the front of the field and side-by-side battle for position number 5. Throw on the inside goes Matthew Long, and it'll be a 2-spot swing there as the number 28 machine loses the spot. They were able to do that fight despite Ronnie Kurtz being in the middle of it all. A lapped car in the number 23, not for position, but certainly was a factor in that one, and Matthew Long timed that pass on the lap traffic well to get his way up to position number 8. I think it's the highest we've seen his entry tonight after starting in the number 12 position. He finds himself now, of course, running inside of the top 5, looking for a little bit more, but up front, again, your intervals are much larger. That battle was 2 seconds ahead of 6th, and it's 2 seconds behind 4th. I mean, you're going to need a lot more to catch up to this man right here, Noah Bitts, who is starting to see all of that lap traffic on the horizon, and he's only got about a 4 car length gap back to Chris Wilhite P2, so he needs to be smart about how he deals with these lapped cars, but he can't take it too easy. As slow on the inside is Matthew Martell, the number 35 machine, a lap down, just getting out of the way.
This is a very critical moment for Noah Bitts in order to maintain the race lead. He can choose to stay tucked up behind him, but he will know he will lose time to Chris Wilhite, so he's got to find a way to make the pass as clean and as quickly as possible in order to give a little bit of breathing room between him and his competitors. As Dalton Collins moves up to P3, we're watching on board still with Noah Bitts. He will look to the inside of the 26 machine of Pedro Henrique, who will move him back a position and put him a lap down again as they continue on. But still, a great drive for Bitts as he works his way through, having to pick and choose what lane he wants to take in order to be able to make it work. But for somebody like Alexander Vandersand, he's just going to wall ride it and just hope for the best.
And he almost got into the wall there again. He's playing with fire up there. He's clearly got this figured out, but he's scraped the wall a little bit. He's really worried me up there. And now Matthew Long's going to get to the inside of him, so if he's comfortable up there, if that's the line he's comfortable running, you can't really blame him for running up there, because that's probably going to maximize his chances of survival here. But it's not really working here late in the stint. You can see Matthew Long all over the back of him, and he's also lost touch with Chris Willite and with Collins and with Bitts. So Van de Sant's strategy not really working in the long run here, but he's got 300 more laps to figure that out. Our old buddy Arjuna Kankapati told me to roast Alex very extra hard, because he's one of our Indy regulars on RaceSpot and on iRacing in total, but I can't roast him very hard right now. He's been hanging on. He's been struggling a little bit late in the run, but been spectacular. He's given us something to look at.
Yeah, that's for sure, and again has been consistently one of the best cars in the field over the course of this race. Headed off and down the back straightaway, down into turn number 3. You can see that number 11, always easy to spot where Wesley Pistol is in this race. He was up on the outside, lost out into battle to Chris Willhite, who gained, and now spinning for the 3 car as Hoffman's into the outside wall, the 36 there, Patrick Leroy, and now the yellow comes out very delayed after they had gotten into the wall, and then Leroy actually wrecked again, which is why the yellow comes out. So we had gotten away with it, but then Leroy came down off the hill and got clobbered by Joshua Watson. Watson, I think, had no inkling that that car up top was going to turn right in front of him, and that's where the yellow flag actually comes from.
Tough break for a lot of those drivers right there who were having some runs. Clayton Hoffman was one of your, of course, front row starters inside the top 5 at this earlier point of the race. Fell back throughout the field, had to climb his way back up, but with that damage, along with also that 36 machine also, it's been a tough break as Patrick Leroy, as we take a look at the replay. Leroy's wall riding up there. He tries, and then we see another incident. Same thing, not cleared for Clayton Hoffman. Turn 2 strikes again.
And that's the 3rd time that Patrick Leroy, oh dear. I mean, you can probably blame him for the latter stages of that accident, but I think that's the 3rd time tonight that somebody has cleared themselves over Leroy's nose through no fault of his own. So he's just been a big old orange incident magnet, unfortunately, but then he also lost in front of traffic, so it might have evened out for him. His luck might have evened out.
You'd think the bright color would make it easier for the other cars to see him, spotter or not, but apparently that is not the case, and we have almost wholesale service on pit road. Bit's going to make that long drive down to the number 1 pit stall. Again, it helped him bounce back after losing the race lead on the last full cycle of pit service, and let's see what happens as they're in this time. Right side's on and complete. You can see Pitts' crew as they go over to the left, already about 1.5 to 2 seconds ahead of Collins behind. The challenge comes from the 4, but that stripe too close for Bitts, and Noah Bitts again continues to reap the benefits of that pole from earlier tonight and maintains the lead of the cars who race off of pit road. Bowen did not pit, so he'll stay out, actually receive a lap lead, but it comes into pit a lap later, so that will make it wholesale service.
Keeping an eye on some of the other competitors who are working their way up through the field. Of course, we saw Patrick Leroy being one of your biggest movers, but right now that position now goes to Thomas O'Hara, 29th to 5th position. Definitely one of those drivers who's been on the move here tonight.
Of course, Dalton Collins, we've talked about him. We've talked about all of our biggest movers, but there's been a few guys kind of under the radar, I think, as I look through the order. David Hall's done a good job of kind of recovering. He fell back a little bit in the early stages of this race. He was flailing a little bit on those old tires, but he's done a great job of getting everything back together, running back in the top 8 here.
Justin Campbell asking somebody in the field to give a speech to give these drivers a bit of motivation. They're starting to feel the wear on their bodies as we get closer and closer to halfway home in this Bristol 500. He's also requesting the pit crew to change out the chair that he's sitting in. Needs an adjustment to get comfortable. Again, there's not 140 degrees. You're not sweating off 10 pounds, but Still get sore. Arms get sore. You get sweaty. You get sore from sitting still. You got to keep the blood flowing. So these drivers feeling it as we have been racing now for more than an hour from virtual Bristol Motor Speedway. So a familiar face on the front row, but how about Will Height up to second for the first time tonight? Green flag back in the air, and Bits blitzes the restart. Here comes Collins to the inside looking for second.
A little bit of a slow start right there for Chris Wilhite. He's going to now fall into the clutches of Dalton Collins and Alexander Vandersat as they jockey for position now as they come across the line. We are about to hit 2/5 of tonight's racing action.
Up on the top, the 2-0, and the caution's out as quickly as it went away. Not sure who brought it out. I sure hope Patrick Leroy wasn't involved again. It looks like it might have been Watson and Martell at the back of the field.
So the quickest yellow off of a restart that we have seen tonight, and it indeed either involved Leroy or he was one of two incidents, but Leroy was certainly into the wall. The front end damage on that car 2 laps down obviously involved in an incident earlier. At least this time it didn't happen off of 2, but I think the replay will show that Patrick Leroy just got loose on his own, trying to navigate around some maybe slower cars in front of him. Again, maybe trying to tighten up that turning radius a little bit too much. Watch, I think he tries to cut under the 33, gives it a little bit too much wheel. It's sideways, snaps up the hill, and gets into the outside wall. So unfortunately, another incident for the 36.
Well, now, Taylor, every time we have one of these, quick start, yellow, restart again, I'm always thinking about the driver in second place or even the driver in third place on these restarts, because personally, I'm not good at doing restarts. Whenever I fire up old iRacing for one of the few times I do that nowadays, I suck at restarts. It's just so easy to get held up, to get backed up, to have your reaction time just be too slow. But Chris Wilhite, he's in his best position of the entire night. He's been great on the long run. But in 300 laps from now, if we have a short run to the end, he's got to figure out how to make that short run pace work. And he didn't nail the restart last time. He didn't necessarily need to, but I'm just always curious about how these drivers learn over the course of these restarts from one to the other. And how do you apply that again?
It's all about trial and error, Joey. I mean, one thing for sure is you have to be able to know when and where timing will come into play. Sometimes, of course, you have to make sure, hey, you watch on and you have maybe a little bit of a cue, maybe to see what the leader can do if you're starting on that outside row. Sometimes maybe if you have your spotter, he can help you out on that matter here. But for those who don't have spotters, you just have to watch and learn of how the race leader starts and restarts these races in order for you to maybe try to match or keep pace. Or maybe if you're the leader, you have to change it up a little bit. You can't always just go at a certain point, because then your second place, third place drivers will know the cue and then will follow suit pretty quickly.
Yeah, me signing up for this race was just a scam to get free driver coaching. So I guess I should just reveal that now.
I wouldn't have touched it, so I'll give you credit for that at least. As again, yeah, we'll see where does that difference come from, right? I mean, Bits has been the best car in the field tonight, but it hasn't been by a huge margin. Drivers have been able to stay within a second or two of them. So what's that difference going to come from? Is it going to come from changing up your line? Is it going to come from forcing yourself to get off strategy, or are you fine if you're the second, the third, the fourth fastest cars? If you're Wilhite or Collins and Van de Sande, who have been here throughout it as well, are you fine with 2, 3, and 4, or do you risk it? Do you risk to go for the win at the chance of giving up what seems to be pretty comfortable spot right now inside of the top 5? Pace car off it in. Bits has been so good on the bottom. That does not change here. Again, clear for the race lead, down to 1.
How about, of course, Alexander Vandesat going back up to the top side of the racetrack wall, riding around here. He's got a couple of other drivers who are going to follow his way a little further back, but as he works his way back up to that outside wall, he tries to get a good run off corner exit against Boyd Hogan and Dalton Collins, but that inside lane is the place to be as they come out of turn number 4 across the line. He'll have to slot back in to that 5th position.
I don't know if the top line is getting worse or the cars on the bottom line are just getting better, because Van de Sant, he was so strong up there in some of those restarts. You saw him, you saw Boudinot just blasting around the outside, passing cars like they didn't even have to put any effort in. But now that he's trying to work on Boyd Hogan, he's trying to work with Bento and Naslin behind, the top line is kind of fallen out of favor. It's not working for him at all. I got to wonder, does he have the time? Does he have the ability to move down a little bit, find a line that works a little bit better for him? Because if he doesn't, it looks like he's just going to get swallowed up here. Bento's to his inside now. Hogan's easily by him. He's going to peek to the outside again, but the momentum just doesn't seem to be there on the outside right now.
Trying his best to find a way through that 10 way back up to the outside line. It's going to allow Hogan to get all the way through and clear. So Boyd Hogan now back up to the number 4 spot after having gotten cycled back into the teens a little bit earlier on in this one. Further on down the road, a lot of action as they race off it into 1 and 2, battling here in the midfield, the 86 and company, trying to find a little bit of space off of this restart. The 99 right there in the mix as well, as they try to find their way through by the start finish line. All of this right in and around the battle for about 12th on back.
Watching that battle for P12 is a really good one between Bonnie Nevin and Brooks Durning as well. Of course, Brooks was involved in an incident early on, and how he's up here challenging back for another top 15 finish as he will stick to the bottom lane. He's in front of course, the number, I'm trying to catch the number of that driver that they were passing by, but I believe he was a multiple laps down as they worked their way out through the outside lane of that lap car. I believe as they work their way, continuing to log laps and work their way around, they are catching up to Mike Garagusa, who is in that 12th position, who's also been having a quiet run.
You saw Matthew Long in that maroon car getting around the outside of Fitzgerald. I think he's a lap down right now, so he's got a lot of work to do. He was one of the drivers who was fighting for this win. He was in 4th. I honestly don't know what happened to him. I don't know how he's gone a lap down, but Matthew Long suddenly has a huge hill to climb. And here's Garagusa, the driver we were talking about on your screen right now. He's just fallen back a little bit. Durting's gotten by him. I think next up is going to be Steve Richard, who we haven't mentioned all night. He's having to drive through the field as well.
Yeah, Richard, one of the few drivers in the field who did not qualify. He didn't, Nebin didn't, who's right behind him as well, the 32 machine. And then also even further ahead, Johnny McNamara also didn't queue. Those cars all started in the mid-30s, and we're starting to see their approach come through, right? We talked about this early. Some drivers are going to want to qualify up front, stay up front. Others will try the opposite, right? Hang out at the back. You need enough pace to not get lapped, but you want to be behind where all of the trouble comes from. And we're not even halfway through this race, but it seems like the bit of attrition that we've seen so far is allowing those drivers who didn't start, based on queue times, to find their way through the field. To the outside there and around the 37 goes Johnny McNamara there. So another position gained. McNamara now looking to the inside on the 32 car. It's Figueroa there. So all these cars just on the cusp of the top 10, looking for a little bit more.
They are really trying to get a good run here as we are closing into the halfway point of tonight's racing action at the Bristol Motor Speedway. And of course, they may think, oh, we're at halfway. That's still a long way to go here at this circuit, given of how much more racing we have, and of course, how many more cars has to be passed here tonight for some of our race leaders, such as Noah Bitts, who is having to negotiate through this lap traffic.
And once he does have to negotiate this large pack, if he ever does, if we do go long enough, that is going to be very, very difficult stuff, because he's got Willow directly on the back of him. Look at this, the 86, the 21, and the 7 almost into each other, almost into the back of each other. This is troublesome stuff, but McNamara's been working his way through the field. Durting's been working his way through the field. There's a lot of drivers on different laps here in different positions. Not all of these are for position, but drivers that are for position are really cycling up front here.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more that you mentioned, right? The fact that there's lapped cars mixed in with the battles amongst race leaders. That's no shock. We're going to see that a lot more tonight. We're down to 20 cars of the 37 who started this race being on the lead lap. The number of cars total still in this race, I think, sits at 32. So 1 in every 3 cars on track is not actually on the lead lap. It's easy to use that 20 as kind of a spotter here. Johnny McNamara, the yellow, white and blue Walmart entry on the inside of the number 17 up top. That's the entry of Scott Naslin that he's fighting with. Naslin going to get a better run off of the corner there. It'll pull him up and alongside the number 5 of Drunowski, who's a lapped car, so doing his best to again stay low and out of the way, but that's a spot gained in the end for Naslin.
Naslin having a great run right now as he works his way up through the field inside that top 10. He's been running in around the top 10, top 15 for most of the race, but really is starting to shine in this second stage of the race as they work their way through, keeping up with Brooks Dirting. Johnny McNamara as well is currently picked up from 34th position to 11. Definitely one of those drivers to keep an eye on during the second half of the race.
McNamara's done a great job of just keeping it clean. He hasn't really put up any headlines here. He hasn't done anything especially egregious. He's just been running his race, and 231 laps later, he's found himself just outside of the top 10. He was in the top 10 previously, but sometimes that's the best way to run a race at Bristol. You don't always want to be the storyline. You don't want to be the guy who turned himself across somebody's nose under caution and got the lead back. You don't want to be one of those drivers who has to drive through the field. Sometimes you just want to hang around, and McNamara has been, there's a couple drivers who we haven't talked about much tonight because they've been so clean, and that's a good thing, and McNamara is one of them.
Yeah, mission accomplished to this point. Now let's see how the final 267 laps go. Now that you get in the top 10, people are going to start to pay attention, wonder where you came from, be curious about what you got. They haven't raced around you much tonight, so they're going to have to figure out how they can race you. As you see Steve Richard in the dark black and blue number 32 car struggled to get around lapped car Neil Phelps. What that's done is it's opened up the outside, and now David Hall for position has been able to drive to the outside in the iRacers Lounge Chevrolet, and there you go. An attempt to clear a lapped car will cost the 32 a spot, as Hall's able to pounce and take advantage.
Yeah, Hall has definitely been on a charge right now in that number 27 machine as he continues to try to log laps here on the iRacers Lounge machine, trying to hold off the 32 of Steve Richards, who's also been having a little bit of a good run. He started in 36th position and has now worked his way into the top 15. A great drive for him.
And on your screen right now, look at our old buddy Boudinot. Remember, he drove back literally to the lead. He's the only driver who's been able to take the lead from bits all night, and as soon as he got the lead, he got loose, and he fell all the way down through the field. I think he was in like 32nd at one point, but he's made so many moves. He's passed his way all the way up into the top 5, or at least he was in the top 5. Then Bento got by. Now it looks like Collins and Hogan have done a little bit better of a job of keeping the tires under them on this long stint, but Boudinot has done a great job of driving his way back through the field here, and hopefully there's no more negative 32 position setbacks, because like I've been saying all night, this car is strong, this car can make passes, and this is the kind of car that you want in the battle for the lead from an entertainment perspective.
And up on the outside line there, up on the high side, trying to find a spot down in line, unable to for the time being, is that number 31 machine of Boudinot, back up to the number 8 position. Of course, trying to complete that charge back to the front of the field. Tricky to do so on these long green flag runs. Some drivers who find themselves back in traffic prefer restarts, opportunities to bunch the field up. Other drivers who feel like their strength comes from a long run car, they prefer the opposite. And here's the swing down to the inside of 4 position. Brooks Dirting trying to get alongside. He'll get nose to nose, but he's not going to be able to challenge that run off of the outside. Let's see what happens now. Almost clear. Doesn't make the mistake of clearing himself, and his third time going to be the charm, off to 3 and 4. Yes, it is. Dirting gets by Boudinot, and he's now driven his way to P8.
Great drive by Brooks Durning, as well as we watch up towards the front of the field of Dalton Collins, who will get around for a position of Miguel Bento for the 5th spot as they continue to now try to close up to Jake Collins, who's about 4 seconds up or about 7/10 of the road from him, as they will try to chase down him and see if he can pick up another spot. But Dalton Collins doing what he needs to do, just biding his time, save his tires for the run. How about some 3-wide action as they go into turn 3?
I'd say, how about no 3-wide action? Please don't. I think all 3 of those drivers would agree with me. Wesley Pistol kind of beating the train here in that Tennessee truck. I don't remember if that'll make a Race Spot current viewer Terry Radford happy. I believe he's a Tennessee fan, so Terry, if you're still listening in the truck, I think your guy's doing reasonably well. He's still alive. That might be all you can ask for, but that was scary stuff. 3-wide is always scary, and it's especially scary when you're on a different lap from all the other drivers you're racing. It's like, if you get taken out racing for position 3-wide, that's one thing, but if you get taken out by a lapped car 3-wide, that's even more frustrating.
Yeah, that's what, frustration, I think, is a big thing, right? Everybody needs to be able to keep a level head, and late in this race, your patience might get thin. You might expect that driver to pull out of the way. They may also, though, be frustrated with the fact that they're not on the lead lap anymore. They're not going to give you as much of a break as you would want, and it could be a point of contention. Watching a battle for 6th and 7th. It's Jay Collins way up on the inside. Miguel Bento trying to make the move down on the inside, and that 28 machine is through and with company, because Durning going to follow suit as well. So Collins drops a quick 2 spots and finds himself now in position number 8, as there are 250 down and 250 to go, halfway in the Bristol 500.
And of course, as we cross over that halfway point, only 31 cars are still out there on the track, so we have not lost a whole lot of drivers in this endurance race here tonight, as we watch, of course, the 29 or the 12 machine of, or 19 machine of Jake Collins, 29 on your timing and scoring, and now go watch the 2 teammates of Boyd Hogan and Dalton Collins jockeying for position.
Hogan's kind of overhauled Collins here as the long run driver. Dalton Collins, at least, has been the long run driver. We've been talking about him all night, but Boyd Hogan, this is his first time really fighting for the win here. He's been around all night. He's been around in kind of the latter half of the top 10, but he's driven his way up to 4th. We know how strong of a driver he is. Know how strong he is in a long run here tonight, and that Cincinnati car is moving forward. Vandesant's really struggling on the top as well. So Hogan might have 3rd place in his hands here before he knows it.
So halfway home in one of the longest races on the NASCAR side of the iRacing special events calendar, and there is still so much left tonight from Bristol. We'll take an opportunity to step aside. Noah Bitts, though, has been in control for the first lap. He's led 229 laps, but can he close it out? We'll be right back on RaceSpotTV. And back live from iRacing's virtual Bristol Motor Speedway, 275 laps in the works in tonight's iRacing Bristol 500. Alongside myself, Evan Pasoko, joined by Taylor Burris, Joey Tebbett upstairs. Our producer downstairs is Tyler Maxon. And as we are halfway through in Thunder Valley tonight, it has been the night of Noah bits, but man, has there been a lot of shuffling around over the course of the night. So as we watch this battle going on back in the pack, let's take a look top to bottom, recap kind of where everybody's at, and take a look at our iRacing midway race break. Of course, Bits started this race on a pole position. He has led 249 laps, and there's a slow car on the racetrack. Look out! David Hall is slow, and now everybody's wrecking. The 1 car's around, the 7 cars around. What just happened? They're all over the place on the front stretch, and the yellow's out.
And Collins. Oh no.
I would have to go back and look at the 27 of David Hall, who was the first one who was slowing down during this time period.
Oh, he got cleaned. David Hall is furious on the radio right now, telling Pedro Henrique that he was letting him go. Henrique was a lapped car, and he just got wiped. Let's take a look at it on the replay. You'll see Hall's going to go to the outside, and what on earth was that about?
Enrique just got really out of the groove there, and then I think the caution actually came out because Collins clipped the apron there trying to avoid everything. That's what brought the caution out. But Enrique, he was just trying to get by, and then I guess he just completely misjudged it, took way too much speed, and yeah, like you said, he just cleaned out Hall and brought out that caution. One of the strongest cars in this race, one of the threats for the win, Colton Collins, loses it avoiding it. He got a little bit of damage as well because McNamara clipped him. So that's one of the strongest cars in the race on the back foot again. He's gonna have to drive through the field again.
Yeah, just not a fan of the wheel input I'm seeing looking at the 26 car in that one.
Yeah, tough break for a lot of heavy hitters involved in that, as a couple of cars will come down pit road. Noah Bits, Chris Wilhite, Boyd Hogan. I did see a couple of cars decide to stay out during this run, but we'll have to wait and see how that will come to play and to fruition for them, as we see, of course, some severe damage to the rear end of that 95 of Dalton Collins.
There's got to be.
So we had almost gotten to green flag stops, guys. I mean, that's another point, right? The longest run of the night, almost there. We were on the brink, and again, it happens under yellow.
Yeah, and I deliberately wasn't going to mention it 'cause I didn't want to curse it again, but it happened again. It seems like we're always cursed out of getting green flag stops. That's happened a couple times this week. Happened in the Coke Series race earlier this week as well, on about lap 75. So green flag pit stops at Bristol, harder to come about than you'd think, I guess. And it looks like on my screen, I think Dalton Collins stayed out. So did he go a lap down when he spun? Did the leaders get by him? I think they did. So I think he might still be a lap down, but he is the first car behind the pace car. So that's kind of what he had to do, because he lost all that track position. He lost all those spots. He needs to get the wave around here to get back on the lead lap. But again, he's just on the back foot. He is going to bring it down pit road here. So I think he's going to be trapped a lap down.
Well, that's going to be a tough break for him, because that is going to be a competitive battle for the Lucky Dog spot to get a wave around. Of course, if we get a quick yellow, service just completed, you'll have enough fuel to be able to simply just try to get the Lucky Dog. But it's you're going to get yellows. I don't think anyone thinks we're going to go green for the next 218. If we did, I'd be shocked. But you don't want to have to be back there fighting with those guys. There's cars that started this race top 10, top 15. Off of the lead lap right now, fast race cars that you're going to have to be competing against if you want to get that free ticket back. Wave around's going to go to Bowen, Campbell getting waved around, Phelps and others. Other cars still on pit road. McNamara in for extended service. Hoffman still on pit road, likely going to miss the restart in this one. So several drivers going to be trapped a lap down. Looks like we'll have about 15 cars on the lead lap for the next restart. This time it'll be with 217 laps to go. So Will Height, for the second time in a row, going to be on the outside of row number 1. Vander Sant going to be forced to the inside of 2. How can the 10 car find his way up top? Green flag in the air. Bits gets another good jump. He's got 2 car lengths in one.
Great jump on the field for Noah Bitts. How about Chris Wilhite still jockeying for position here in that? And now Brooks Dirting now. He's going to try to go and jockey for the race lead and take it away from Noah Bitts as they'll go side by side for the race lead. To the top of the racetrack he'll go. New race leader, Brooks Dirting.
It was like he didn't even have to try. I think he actually blinked a little bit, so he kind of threw everybody off their game and just drives by Bitts like nobody has been able to do all night. Look at Garaguzzo as well. He's been around in the back half of the top 10 all night. He's been strong. He finds himself up front, and he drives around Bitts like he's not even there. This is incredible stuff. The top line still not working for Van de Zandt, really, but it's worked out incredibly for Dirty and Garaguzzo, and they've just completely overhauled Bitts.
So this is the first time that we have seen Noah Bitts get attacked like this. He falls to position number 3. It's going to be Dirting as the buffer car to second, and Garaguzzo for the first time tonight in the lead of this Bristol 500. Looking at the funny to behind, that's Van de Zandt. No shocker, up on the outside. Scott Naslund in line behind him. Miguel Bento in the fan attack entry, down on the inside. Budno looking from behind. Where does he want to follow? And even further up the road, Wilhite sitting defensively right now in position number 4.
A lot of great battling happening here tonight as we watch, of course, Noah Bitts. He'll look to the inside of Brooks Dirting. How about Chris Wilhite? He wants to try to follow suit as they work out of the corner and work down across the front straightaway. Noah Bitts will try to take that second place back away, but Brooks Dirting is going to fight him really hard for position as now drivers are now starting to go up to the top side of the racetrack. Alexander Van der Zandt is now up to the top line once again. Throw in Scott Naslund, Miguel Bento, and of course, Corey Bodenot, who is also up to the top side of the racetrack.
Yeah, Boudinot is one of those drivers who's been able to work both lanes very, very well. He's going to throw it to the middle there, get by Miguel Bento. You have to find a slot in the middle between Naslund and Van de Zandt here. He might just do that. He's just got so much more momentum in that car. He's just got so much more speed in every single lane, but the track is very much clogged up here. 2x2 looks like the highway outside of Bristol right now. But Boudinot is going to stay where he is, and a little bit of internet connection issues again for Dirting, I think. Or no, it's for whoever's second in line. I think it's Bitts, and then it's Garaguzzo. But look at lap traffic here. Very, very slow. The 21 that's checking everybody up.
And to the inside, Noah Bitts wants to go back to the race lead, and he's got it. Only 8 laps after Garaguzzo was able to take it away. Noah Bitts is back on top, and I think that 24 car, the lap machine in the fence, might have spooked Garaguzzo enough to just be a little bit slow off the exit, and the number 2 took absolute advantage of that. And the question I was going to pose was, Bitts hasn't been in traffic really tonight. What can he do? Can he deal with it? The answer was clearly a resounding yes as he goes back to the race lead. Wilhite in second, and now Van de Zandt around the 9 car. He's back up to P3.
And back up to the top side of the racetrack, doing what he knows best here. And oh, big wiggle there for Garaguzzo as he will now fall into the clutches of Bondonat, who will now move up to P4 as they work their way back into turn 3 and 4. Here comes Wilhite. He's going to go up half a lane to try to see if he can put some pressure on Noah Bitts. But now Bondonat looks to the inside of Van der Zandt for that 3rd spot.
And Wilhite on the outside is going to try and get by Bitts as well. These lanes on this restart, this seems like more multi-groove of a racetrack than it's ever been so far tonight. Wilhite gets to the outside. Wilhite makes the move. Is he clear? Not quite into turn 1. Now he is a little bit more momentum, a little bit more speed, and he is able to clear Bitts. So Bitts is actually having to race for the lead for the first time tonight. Boudinot has been very strong. Wilhite finally has the short run speed. And Bitts has got to prove, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, Evan, how good is he on offense compared to how good he's been on defense?
It's the biggest challenge you've seen tonight, right? Lost the race lead, got it back, thought maybe that was going to be the end of it, but unable to pull away, got passed up by Wilhite, and this ain't done yet. It's Boudinot to the outside. He'll also be able to clear the 2 car off of turn 2. So now Bitts right back down to 3rd just as quickly as he regained all of that footing. Van de Zandt behind, and then a little bit of a jump back to Garaguzzo, Bento, and company. So So the top 4 trying to break, and now going for the race lead is Budno to the outside of the racetrack, and he's got it. So the 31 car cooking inside of 200 to go, and Budno now rockets to the top of the board.
What a pass for the race lead, and what a drive for Budino, who is looking to see what he can do and see if he can pull away. But here comes Noah Bitts to the inside. He will blitz to the inside of Chris Wilhite to pick back up second place and set his sights on Corey to retake the race lead as the field works their way through the corner. Alexander Vanderstat works back to the outside lane. He's got Miguel Bento right there hot on his heel for 4th position.
Garagusso's just falling back here. I saw a few laps ago, I think we just barely missed it, but he almost turned Naslund going into turn 1. They kind of pushed him perpendicularly, but they managed to save it. And now he's just getting swallowed up here. Durden's going to get by. Steve Richard is next up, and Matthew Long as well, who's a lap down. He's still working to get back on the lead lap. He was one of those cars, one of those drivers who, frankly, had the speed to win this race, but he's just trapped a lap down. And it's been so difficult to get that lucky dog position, but he's going to get to the outside of Garagusso here. He's going to drive by him like nobody's business, and Budino and Bitts are side by side for the lead again. Nobody seems to want to hold on to this lead.
The most wide open this race has been all night, so if these drivers needed anything to wake them up past the halfway point, how about the battle for the race lead? That, I think, will do the trick. Lap traffic up the road. Bowen's going to go down to the inside, out of the way. A little bit loose, a little bit sketchy, but does clear. And now again, Bitts trying to get back through on the inside.
Bowen lost it in the background in the apron. Is that going to bring out a yellow, or is he kept it off the racing surface? I think he has. So false alarm, but that was scary. Bowen was all over the place trying to get out of the way.
Shows you how quick it can happen.
Certainly can, as we go now 2 by 2 for 2 rows deep here. We see, of course, Wilhite and Bodeno working for positions, as we now see Miguel Bento. He wants to go up to the podium positions, as he'll look to the inside of Miguel or Corey Bodeno for that 3rd spot, move Bento up. And now he will try to work the outside lane, as Alexander Vanderstat is going to get a big power move on the outside around Corey, move him up to P4.
Vanderstat somehow gets even higher than Budino there. The high line hasn't been working for him lately, and I think I kind of was able to diagnose it. He's just running so high that on the exit, you can see he actually has to lift a little bit, I think. He just loses all of his momentum because he's running so high. He's pinching himself off, but it's worked out. He's found the line again, and he was able to drive by Budino. There's racing nicknames for drivers who run the high side. There's Kyle Strickler, the high side tickler. I'm trying to think of one for him. Maybe Alexander Vandesandit, the high side bandit. There we go. That works.
I think we brand it. I think we trademark that, sell some t-shirts. We could probably get them printed before this race is done and have him standing by in virtual victory lane if he can find that little bit extra, right? I mean, he's been 3rd for a lot of this race. Hasn't been able to get that little bit more. Not that, you know, being consistently a 3rd or now 4th placed car is bad, but not going forwards. Whereas in the case of Miguel Bento, always improving, right? Bento started way back in 31st, jumped quickly to a top 15 car, then a top 10 car, and since then has been inching, picking his way through the field, but constantly improving. What can that 28 car do in a battle up front? We have not seen him take a real swing at the race lead yet tonight.
No, we really haven't, and he's just been, but the thing is, he has been there. He's really been utilizing some different lanes, searching, and found the lane that works best for him. And I think before this race is over, Alexander Vanderstat will be able to send it up to the race lead and jockey for positions with Noah Bitts if the opportunity presents himself. I have to say, if he starts on the outside of row number 1, if we get a caution late in the going, watch out for him. He will definitely be a contender.
Watch out for Bento, though. Another driver who's just been able to work the high line better. I think that might actually be the place to be. But Vanderstat has been running it a little bit too high because Willite made the move for the lead on the top. Bento's making the moves for second, approaching the lead on the top. But anecdote over. Yellow's back out. I hope it's not Leroy again.
Johnny McNamara spinning late, but I don't think he was the start. I think it may have been Panhari in the 14, maybe a combination of those two. They are both lap down cars at this point. McNamara 32 down. Let's watch the 14.
Ooh, I don't know if the 14 just got a little bit loose off of corner exit and then just makes the hard hit to the 20 machine. And it looked like the 20 also went up the track and got a little bit loose himself in front of the field, but just a tough break for multiple competitors in that one.
Yeah, McNamara had nowhere to go there. The 14 just got loose and forced him down into the inside wall, and that was kind of funny at the end there. McNamara kind of swerved back up. It was like he was afraid of hitting the pace car, but I think that was just a coincidence. That is very unfortunate for McNamara. He was that driver who we mentioned a little bit earlier. He's been staying out of trouble all night, and unfortunately just gets collected in somebody else's accident. The 33 as well got caught up in McNamara coming back up the track. So Neil Phelps, who started shotgun on the field, 37th to try and stay out of trouble. Unfortunately, he has not been able to stay out of trouble. He's 24 laps down right now, and he just got another kick to the face.
It's a tough break for those drivers, but it is an easy decision on a pit road. 42 laps out of fuel since the last bit of service. They are all down and in. And as you can see, the first couple of drivers get their service on the first half of pit road. Most of your race leaders who qualified well down onto the second half of the pit lane. Noah Bitts, right side tires going on the race car. The left side tires going to go on next as a challenger approach. Not in time and not necessarily close at all. So Bitts first off pit road, second off will be Wilhite, Van de Sant third, Bento and Budno, your top 5 cars in the race off of the pit lane. Thomas O'Hara, Matthew Long stayed out for an additional lap, so they looked to score a bonus point. Don't think they actually got it in the end, and that'll send the final couple of stragglers off into the pit lane, and all of your notable race leaders do end up coming down for service under the yellow as we cross over to lap 324.
About 177 laps to go here. It's still a lot of green flag racing left to go. Drivers have to still start having to sense that urgency to go up just a little bit, not too much, but just enough to where they need to realize, okay, I know how my car is during each type of run we have, especially for a long run, a short run, and then of course a mid run. Now they need to figure out how they can put it all together for these final 177 laps. They need to try to figure out where they can get their car before they have 100 laps to go. Then try to figure out where they need to get their car when 50 laps to go. If you're inside that top 5 or even that top 10, you definitely could have a shot to go and battle for a podium or even the race win.
Speaking of a shot for the race win, if you just saw on the bottom of your screen who just drove by the pace car, who just got the lucky dog? Dalton Collins just got the lucky dog. He's back in the lead lap. He's in 16th. We've seen him in that low of a position before on the lead lap, and he drove his way all the way up to second on legitimate pace. So Dalton Collins got set back a little bit, but he's back in the fight here. And he sees Noah Bitts at the front of the field. He knows he has the speed to fight with him. He's got to pass 15 cars, or actually more like 30 cars, because he's at the back of the train.
Green flag back in the air, this time with 175 laps to go. That is a long way still from Bristol as we close in on 2/3 of the way home in this Bristol 500. So Bitts, control car, leading off for the restart, but he saw him get swarmed last time. What could Wilhite do? Bento got sideways that time off of 4, and now he's under attack. Garaguso can't do it. Naslund will get to the outside. That one's for 4th.
Great racing action here as we watch Wilhite, Van der Sant trying to find a way to catch up to Noah Bitts and put him under pressure as they come out of turn number 2 down that back straightaway. How about Scott Naslund? And of course, he's inside the top 4.
I think that's the first time he's been inside the top 4 all night. A little bit of wall scraping in the background. I think that's Steve Richard. Unfortunately, and Fitzgerald gets turned in front of him, and the caution's back out again. Fitzgerald is nowhere to go there, I don't think. He just got turned as everybody checked up there for Richard.
It was backed up against the outside wall, and the yellow flag is out. Just a tough break there, and we'll watch it all unfold again. But it was Richards where it all started. Got a little bit high and up to the outside wall on the exit of turn 4, and just wasn't room. I mean, obviously the 6 machine of Piccoli is going to try to go down to get through. I just don't think that memo got to Fitzgerald, and Fitzgerald gets hooked by the 6. Can't really blame the 6 for just not wanting to drive it into the back of the car in front of him, and That's how Fitzgerald ended up wrong way around in the outside wall. And for a race in which we only had 16 cars on the lead lap at the time, guys, that is 2 cars in the top 10 that get a pretty, or close to the top 10, I should say. They're running 11th and 12th position that do get some pretty significant damage in that one.
He certainly did, and that's going to cost them some valuable position as well as also some time on pit road. They got to get that damage fix in order for them to continue on, because here I've noticed, especially speaking from experience, when you get a lot of damage to that nose of the car, yes, it's not really an aero-dependent track like we would see at a 1.5 miles or a super speedway, but you got to watch those temperatures and make sure you take care of that temperature. Otherwise, you'll easily blow a motor.
Yeah, you don't really want to go kablamo when you're on the lead lap after like 400 miles. But Wesley Pistol is one of those drivers with damage. I just saw him get the lucky dog as well. So Terry Radford still listening, get cheering. Tennessee's back on the lead lap. So that's another driver who's been pretty strong, who's back on the lead lap. Matthew Long also got back on the lead lap. And like I mentioned before, Dalton Collins. So the Avengers are kind of reassembling here. We've got all the strongest cars in this race. There's been a couple who have been eliminated, like Hogan, but everybody else who's been in the fight for the win is on the lead lap right now, and that's exactly what we want to see. Sometimes these races come down to luck, but luckily, in the other direction, the strongest cars in this race are still alive and on the lead lap.
And that's fortunate for all of those drivers. Of course, ironic enough that Wesley Pistol in the number 11 car, sporting those Tennessee colors, is running about in the same place that Tennessee's ranked in the AP poll, right at about 15-14. So trying to outdo that number. Of course, Tennessee football undefeated so far this year. So good start for that crew. And I'm sure Terry's enjoying that one. Looking to see if we can get that orange, though, back up and into the top 10 in this race here tonight. Lights still on top of the base car. They may go out the next time by. A couple of more drivers have gone to the garage since we last took a gander way down there. Kralik, Quint, Richardson, Watson, Leroy, Martell, Hogan, Bowen, all in the garage. Campbell recently as well. Going to park that race car. It still leaves us with 28 or so cars in this race, and only about 16 of them on the lead lap. So the carnage continues to add up, and the attrition continues to chip away at some of the stalwarts of the race. Cars that had been top 10 consistently, now with damage, struggling maybe a little bit. Does that open up things a little bit more for some of those in-between cars, the cars who maybe had 15th or 20th speed to come in here, steal a top 10 if you can stay out of trouble for the next 166 laps. Bits on the bottom, gonna go through this one like he has all night. It's an early jump. He's gone. We're back underway.
What a great jump by Noah Bitts to just absolutely check out on the field. But Vandersat is stuck on the bottom of the racetrack. He's got to find a way to see if he can get around Chris Wilhite for that second place, or try to get to the top side of the racetrack as quickly as possible. He'll slide up in front of Scott Naslin for position and goes back to the top of the racetrack with Naslin in hot pursuit.
He's been getting lucky here. He's been getting lucky to find those holes, to find his home back there on the high side. And who else is on the high side? Boudinot. It's not a replay of a previous restart. You're not seeing the same thing you did before, but you kind of are, because the same drivers are trying to roast that high line to make it work. And Boudinot on Naslin now, it's proven a little bit more difficult than it has in previous laps. Now Naslin blocks him off. Bento's kind of boxed in on the bottom. But these guys are only racing for 4th place here. The 2-3 up front, just 2 up front, Bitts and Wilhite, they're actually pulling away just a little bit.
Doing a good job of putting some distance between them and Van de Sant. Looking at that number 34/31 car up on the outside line for Boudinot. Going to clear the 17 at Aslan. Now looking to the outside of the 28 machine of Miguel Bento. Thought he had it there. The 28 does a good job of driving defensively, and side by side they'll continue on in the battle for 4th. Now Boudinot is clear up to 4th. That's a miraculous 26 spots in the green, but he wants to get all the way back to the race lead. He's led 8 laps tonight, looking for more.
He's really putting on as one driver is trying to really battle with Scott Naslin. That's Miguel Bento right in front of him. He will complete the pass as we see Boudinot and Vandersat battling for position.
There was a little bit of a hip check between Bento and Naslin on this previous lap. I don't know if you saw that, but there could be tempers flaring between those two as you see Naslin almost get to the back bumper. Bento, that bright blue car, might be a little bit frustrated with that sort of multicolored black and orange and blue car, the yellow numbers. We've seen tempers flaring earlier tonight. It might be a little bit early in the race for that, but I'm sure Naslin's not too happy about the hip check. He's going to get around the outside cleanly here. A little bit more room left by Bento this time, and a little bit worrying, but he's through, and he's through cleanly, safely too.
That's the big thing, is try to find your way through and find the path of least resistance, right? Naslin quite frustrated with the defense that Miguel Bento had put on in a battle for 5 and 6. Listen, you're inside the top 10. You're more than 340 laps into this race. Some drivers may feel like, hey, you got to yield a little bit, but other drivers are saying, listen, we're just on the cusp of 150 laps to go in this race. Now it's not the time to take it too easy. Every spot matters, and the advantage that Bits and Wilhite had pulled has been evaporated. Van de Sant right there, but Boudreaux, I think the one to watch. The 10 car is going to play defense up top, so what does that 31-34 do? Does he go to the inside, or does he just ride in line with the 10 car here? Because obviously you're going to be driving that car a lot harder, trying to make the inside work, and Van de Sant, he's not budging from where he is.
No, he certainly is not. He is not going to budge an inch to give way for anyone else to take away his line as we watch these two battle for position. Of course, Boudreaux tries both the outside and inside line. I think his car is the most versatile that can make passes on the inside, make passes on the outside, as well as make passes on that middle groove. As long as he can stay out of trouble, he could finish up with a strong finish here tonight, as he'll still stay tucked up to the inside.
Boudreaux's been able to make multiple lines work all night. We've been talking about that all night, about it. He's kind of a miracle worker. That car is working very, very well for him any place he puts it. But unfortunately for him, he's kind of met his match here. Van de Sant has the high line figured out completely. He was struggling with it a little bit earlier, but that battle is just kind of a stalemate right now, as nobody's really able to make any progress. Nobody in the top 10 is really able to make any progress, frankly. It seems like everything's evened out, and I wonder if that might just be slightly deliberate. Drivers are starting to think, maybe we can get a long run going here. Maybe I will need to start thinking about saving. Maybe I don't need to immediately make every single move for the lead here. That might be what we're seeing, or we might just be seeing a little bit of a natural holding pattern. We just got to wait here and see what develops.
And the pit stops tonight have mainly been about convenience, right? We've seen a couple of times where people have gotten off cycle, but that didn't last long. For the most part, everybody has been pretty in touch with one another on when we're pitting, when these cycles are happening. Most of the time, drivers find themselves off cycle if they've been in an accident, forced down pit road for repairs. Now these pit stops matter because you're really starting to count the laps, right? With 500 laps to go in this race when we started, people weren't really doing the math. If I, make it 80 laps, I can do X amount of pit stops, because that wasn't realistically an option. And the numbers suggest that we are not going to go to the end of the race green, right? That would be against the trends we've seen tonight. But you're starting to think, this is my magic number, right? I got to get to lap 410, to 420, to 430 to be comfortable. Can I get there on this run? Do I need to save? Is it one stop from here? Is it two stop from here? I think now that strategy is more consequential, causes these drivers to pause and think about it a little bit more.
It certainly does, and that's going to be so critical for these drivers here to try and think about that. Oh, wait, I got to take a pause and try to think about something here quickly, especially when you're going around this circuit in about just a little over 15 seconds here around this circuit. It's difficult to do so, but it's important to try and slow down in order to get going on that run. Otherwise, you're going to end up towards the back half of the field.
Speaking of the back half of the field, you see a little bit of a modified driving by there. I believe that's the 26. Still out on track, so well done to him. Steve Richard holding out. Actually, that's the 32, not the 26, forgive me, but he's still holding out there, completing as many laps as he can. Maybe he'll get some repairs under caution. But more relevant, on the lead lap, Matthew Long, I mentioned him a little bit earlier. He got the lucky dog a few cautions ago, and he's doing Matthew Long things. He's making passes on the outside. He just got by dirting. Now he almost gets into the back of Naslund. You thought you wiped out your opponent? You thought Matthew Long wasn't going to be a threat? You thought wrong. And now he's chasing up forward. He's going to be in the top 5 here, and he is in the top 5 here right now. Look for him in the top 4 in a couple of laps' time.
Could say he was playing the long game in this one, knowing that it didn't matter what happened at 2. I'm going to take the easy ones, right? Doesn't matter what happens, where you are, lap 200, lap 300, even at lap 400, right? Just because you're a top 5, top 10 car now doesn't guarantee you'll be there at the end. But what matters is that all of those critical intervals over the course of the race, that your car's in one piece, that your car's in drivable condition, and maybe a little bit that you haven't pissed somebody else off, right? This is physical racing. We've seen people get cleaned out for throwing blocks. We've seen people heated on the radio tonight. You got to have a clean race car, and you got to make sure that you haven't made an enemy out of everybody else in the field, and you got a chance. Anybody inside the top 5, the top 10 right now have a realistic chance to win this Bristol 500, and you just know there's a late twist that still awaits us as there goes Long on the inside through Boudinot and up to P4.
Boudinot definitely having a great run as he now falls back, but Matthew Long is another one of those competitors who's been inside the top 10 all night long. That Dirty South Ford Mustang really putting on the pressure and putting on a great show towards the second half of this race.
Making the bottom work this time, so that's another car. It seems like the favor is kind of shifted later on in this run. Boudinot was the driver we were talking about earlier on in the race, who's able to use every single groove on the track. He was able to make every single groove work for him. Now it seems like that's Matthew Long. He's been making the bottom work. He made the top work. He's probably going to have to run a little bit closer to the middle here as Willite and Van de Sant, I don't think they're racing as teammates right now, but they're certainly aligned with each other right now. They're allies right now. They might work together to keep Matthew Long behind. Van de Sant was able to get by Willite. I think Willite just made a mistake on the bottom because he's back on the attack now, and the bottom still seems to be the place to be for Willite.
Looking a little bit further on down the road, side by side with Miguel Bento on the inside of the racetrack. That is Scott Nasland up on the outside. They're fighting for 7th and 8th position at the moment. And Bento down on the inside, of course, going to have a bit of a trickier time here. He's the driver that is on the offensive here. 17 wanted to protect the top side. Bento said, fine, I'll try it low, and fine, he'll do it. So Bento through. He'll snatch away the number 7 position. They're side by side right behind them, and Dalton Collins just put a nice quick pass on Mike Garaguso, so those two will swap out for 9 and 10.
Dalton Collins currently now back inside the top 10 after being a lap down at one point. Now here he will try to work his way through the field, and looking at his lap times right now, he is running the most fastest laps out of your top 10 overall as he continues to log laps and trying to chase down the next car in front of him, which is Miguel Bento. 2/10 up the road. He will try to close that gap as quickly as possible as they continue to log laps and continue to work their way through. But this will be a tight one between Boudinot and Bento, as there you see Dalton Collins get to the inside of Corey and complete the pass, possibly out of turn number 4. The answer is going to be yes.
Was able to complete the pass there. Might have gotten held up a little bit. He might have gotten into boxed in if Miguel was a little bit slower. But now he is on the attack. He's going to peek to the inside. No, he's not. He's not quite close enough. But clearly, Dalton Collins, one of the drivers who, again, I keep repeating myself, but that's just because he's been so strong on these long runs. He's been so good at saving his stuff, looking, a little bit tentative at times, but it's always worked out for him in the long run. And he just drives by Bento like he isn't even there. Next up is going to be Dirting. That should be fairly straightforward. And Bitts, Willite, Van de Sant, Long, and Collins, those have been the top 5 drivers in this race all night, and they're all going to meet each other again in the top 5, and they're almost 3 wide with a lap car a little bit further ahead.
The lap traffic going to constantly be a factor in this race. Look at the sets of 2x2 off and down to turn number 1. It is the battle for P2 on back. Van de Sant camping up on the outside. He's pitched a tent. He's got a fire going. He ain't leaving. The 8 car tucked in line behind. I think that Long has got faith in what Van de Sant's done up there. He has held that line all night, and it has driven his way to P2. And I think the 8 car has made the right call. Clear for the number 3 spot. Now he goes on the offensive. So he just worked with the 10. A little bit squirrely that time. Now he needs to beat the 10. If he wants to get second, can he do it?
He's going to try to do everything as he works to the inside of Van der Stat and battles for position. Matthew Long now coming into play in this where it counts as they go side by side and throw in one of the lap cars also into the mix as they work their way through, as almost slight contact right there as Will Height and Dalton Collins battle for position.
And you know who's a very, very happy boy right now? Noah Bitts. Look at that lead, 2.2 seconds. He's been pulling out Noah bits and pieces of that lead for as long as these guys have been getting held up. But now Matthew Long's completely clear. He seems like he's the fastest car of all these guys right now. Maybe Dalton Collins has a little bit of an effort, but we haven't really seen a real battle of pace one-on-one here. It's been pretty packed up close together, but now this is where we see, can Matthew Long actually bring this gap down? Does he have the speed in that car to bring down a 2.3 second gap on pace? Or is he just going to have to hope that the lap cars cycle through or another Y word comes out soon?
Well, you know it's late in the race when the puns are stacking up against the amount of wall slaps and Y words totals that we've seen over the course of the night, but we are on the cusp of the final 100 laps in this Bristol 500. Still watching the battle right now between the number 10 of Van der Sat, the number 4 Will Height on the inside. It's for 4th and 5th. Up the road, the fight for 2-3 is on, and a quick move with efficiency. Dalton Collins able to get around Matthew Long. Now he's on up to the penultimate spot, guys. But what all this fighting for second on back has done is it has allowed Noah Bitts to pull a 1.9 second advantage. Is that sustainable? Let's see how quickly Collins can eat into it now that he's got a little bit of clean racetrack.
It's going to be critical to see how this will come to play for our drivers as they work their way through the circuit, and keeping an eye as you ride on board with Dalton Collins. The gap now 1.7 seconds. Let's see how quickly he can close that gap.
You can see, if you're one of those ticker watchers like me, you can literally see the gap coming down with every millisecond. Dalton Collins, he's the driver that's going to bring this gap down. I asked if Matthew Long had the ability to bring down a 2.3 second gap. Apparently not. Dalton Collins, the tire wizard, he's been bringing that gap down by like 0.3 per lap here. I'm going to refresh my timing to get that exactly. Last lap for Noah Bitts, 16.25. Last lap for Dalton Collins, 16.05. So 0.2 of a second, Dalton Collins is faster. He's going to bring that gap down very, very quickly. It's only 1.2 seconds. You do the math. He's going to be to the back of Bitts in like 6 laps if everything goes right.
The last lap for him, 15.9, you reference, he's the only driver in the field in the 15.9 bracket of those running in the top 25. Quickly deals with lap traffic. That's going to be key as well. Looking at some of the other side-by-side action, Van der Sat got a bit of the fence that time as they came off of the corner. It's Dirting trying to make the pass down low. Garaguso in line up top. The 12 really wanted to squeeze it between them there. Couldn't do it, and now Garaguso, look out, thought about 3 wide. Not a smart move. This is the battle for 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Tough battling here as Garaguso will work the outside lane with Van der Sat as well as they come across the line out of turn number 4. Van der Sat still holds on. Brooks Dirting gets a little bit too close for comfort with Garaguso as they jockey for position.
We're at that critical point in the stint right now. We passed lap number 70. We're going to have to start thinking about those pit stops in a couple laps time, but this is, again, the time where Van der Sat always seems to fall back, and he's going to fall back a lot because he loses it off of 4. He's been struggling on the top, and now he's struggling with a very hard hit to the inside wall. He's going to bring it down pit road. That was a hard hit, and his tires were falling off, and he finally made that mistake that he hasn't made all night.
Yeah, not many times tonight have these drivers been on 70-lap old tires. He was feeling the pressure from behind, and that was a huge hit to the left-hand side of the race car, guys. And after having such a good night, Alexander Van der Sat is on pit road. The left front tire of the 10 Ford is not spinning at all. So that is severe damage to one of your top runners, and now we pick up the battle for the race lead. Collins has got to get around the entry of Johnny McNamara. Was a lead lap car for much of this night. Got involved in a couple of accidents, and the 20's not rolling over He's making the number 1 division Dalton Collins work for it. He gets it, but just in time for your race leader to put another lapped car in between them in Drudowski, who gets out of the way a little bit quicker. And now Collins again with a bit of racetrack to work with. So Noah Bitts is really going to have to be aggressive with the lapped cars here to keep this gap up.
He certainly is going to have to, and he's coming up to about 4 of them right now as they work their way through. He's got to try to find the opening, make the hole if need be, and put on the pressure big time.
Look at this side by side with the 33. That's a damaged car. Remember a few cautions ago, he got a little bit of damage, no fault of his own, but Mountain Dew car backs out of the way, and then that's Hall, and can't quite tell who that is ahead, but Bitts is really getting held up. The bottom's going to open up for him. It's a good scenario for him. It's definitely not a good scenario if they go 3 wide, but everything works out. Scary moment for Bitts, but it looks like him and Collins are going to get through the lap traffic cleanly here. The 21 is still trying to fight back, but Collins is going to get through, and it'll be back mano-y-mano, car-y-car, 1 versus 2. It's going to be the battle of the pace, and Dalton Collins has had more pace. He's just getting held up here by these lap cars that are fighting back a lot better than I thought they would.
And less than 100 laps to go tonight under the lights at the virtual Bristol Motor Speedway. Bitts has already secured the most laps led, now having led 355 of the 402 that have been completed so far. But the only one that really matters in the end is the last lap. And at this point, it looks like Collins may have the better race car. Collins has only led 1 lap in this race, despite the fact that he started second. He's ran second a lot, guys, and it wasn't even a lap under green. You remember Collins only led that lap because Bitts had faked out a pit road, came across the nose. These 2 cars wrecked into each other under the yellow a couple of 100 laps ago. Collins was the leader under that yellow flag. Doesn't really count. Now he wants to do it for real, and after all of that, he is chasing him down. A 2-car race, 4.2 seconds ahead of the next closest soul.
And with that, of course, these 2 battling, they have a fresh, clean racetrack up ahead of them. So this is just now down to pure speed and pure pace as the drivers now work their way across the start-finish line 95 laps to go. There is lap traffic up ahead, but they have a little bit of breathing room to try to see how they size each other up before they go back at it into lap traffic.
And the 4-second gap that these guys have pulled back to third is even more impressive when you think about the fact that these are both damaged cars. I mean, they've had multiple cautions to fix the damage, so they're probably not especially damaged right now. But Noah Bitts, that incident earlier on in the race, if you're tuning in late, I don't want to forget to mention the fact that that was a very critical moment. And Noah Bitts, who's our leader, turned himself under caution. You can't forget about that, and he's certainly not forgetting about that, even though he's in the lead. And Dalton Collins, his incident was no fault of his own. He lost it while avoiding somebody under caution, and he got clobbered by another driver who was trying to avoid him. So both of these cars have been hit. They're both running wounded. The 2 strongest drivers, the 2 strongest cars, they might be wounded, but I guess that shows you the level of those vehicles and the level of those drivers, because they are just streaking away from everybody else in the field in the longest green flag run we've had so far tonight.
And that blue entry of Scott Naslund is not for position. The 22 car getting lapped by your race leaders. Naslund has been a fast competitor for a lot of this race, has been up and in a lot of the battles in the top 10. He has lost his lead lap status. That means there are only 13 cars on the lead lap right now, and that is soon to be 12 because that Tennessee orange getting bigger and bigger in the windshield of both the Bitts and Collins. Is Wesley Pistol going to be the next driver to be caught, guys? But there are now officially less cars on the lead lap than lapped cars actively on the racetrack. Just impressive, the pace of the cars we're seeing in first and second.
Very fast pace currently. They are looking through the timing and scoring right now. They're anywhere between a 10th plus faster than the rest of the field right now. So this just showcased the immense talent and speed that both of these 2 machines have. Of course, there you see the Ryko machine of Noah Bitts, and then of course the BSM Chevrolet of Dalton Collins, really putting on a great performance and a great battle here on the less than 100 laps to go.
The lap cars really aren't playing in Collins' favor, though. They're not hurting him, but it's evening out completely. I think if he wants to make the pass on Bitts, he's going to need the lap cars to screw over Bitts just a little bit, and they just haven't done that. They've done a good job of getting out of the way, They've both navigated through all the lap traffic completely cleanly. When you're the car in second at Bristol, you don't really want to navigate through the lap traffic cleanly. Collins actually peeks to the inside there. He might have sent that in there if it was 80 laps from now, but he thinks better of it. It's clearly the faster of these two cars right now, but how do you get by if you're just that little bit faster without putting the bumper to Noah Bits in front of him? I'm sure that's a possibility at the end of this race, but 84 laps to go. You're not really going to use the bumper to move a guy out of the way.
Yeah, there's been so much patience for the most part in the field here tonight. You certainly don't want to, cross the line yet. Also, if you're going to bump somebody out of the way at Bristol, doing it with 80 laps to go is not a good idea, because that's 80 laps at which they can pay you back. Typically, if it is going to come to that, that's something that you want to save for much later on in the race. And look at this, the lap traffic playing a factor, not trying to, but Jacob Klein holding the outside was right alongside Collins on corner exit. So Collins was on the bumper a bit, then dropped back a couple of car lengths because of that. He's going to need to try to close back in. And we have cars thinking about coming to pit road. They've been out there for nearly 100 laps on these tires. They are within range to get to the end of the race, guys. So that's interesting for these top two. Who would dare come first? There's about a 1.3 second difference, fresh tires to old tires. So you would think, Taylor, the undercut's good, but man, when you got cars who pit and got fresh tires and we see crazy closing rates like that, I always get worried about contact. And of course, the first cars to pit means that they'll be going a couple of laps down. So there's a lot to think about here as Collins takes a swipe at your race leader.
Collins definitely trying to take a swipe, but yes, this is now the period where strategy comes into play. Yes, if you come down pit road, no matter what, you are going to go one, possibly even 2 to 3 laps down just of how long you're on pit road. Drivers now have to find out when is the right time to come down pit road, and it's going to be critical for them to do that here as we watch the number 9 machine of Mike Garagasu, who is currently trying to get back into the podium positions around Chris Wilhite, who is up ahead of him.
Yeah, Willett and Garagasso both dispatched of Matthew Long, so any long-run pace from Matthew Long has been kind of scuppered here as Garagasso and Miguel Bento's in trouble as well. The 33's in trouble at the top, so lap traffic, again, it's worrying me. When you get to these green flag pit stops, that's exactly what you don't want if you're someone like Naslund. You've gone multiple laps down. Your strategy might just work out if we go green here, but if we go yellow, you're trapped a lap down, and all the guys who continue to stay out, they're going to be in exactly the same positions they were before. It's in Collins. They're going to wait as long as humanly possible to come down pit road. They don't need to do anything else because the gap behind them is so large, because they don't want to get trapped multiple laps down when they're the dominant cars in this race, but they might be in trouble as they get by the 99. But again, working, but clean so far.
So far, how long does it last? And again, Collins, is this really the moment that you want to go for it? He's on the bumper a bit. It's another shot to the back end. 2 shots that time in turns 1 and 2 alone. Now they go to the outside. Trying to mix it up. Is going to get a big run off the corner. Bits, an aggressive block, shuts the door. There's another shot as Van de Sant is back out onto the racetrack. He runs now down in 27th. Whoa.
And Collins loses it.
Pushed it too hard for the one car. He got the block, tried to drive on the bottom. He got into the left rear quarter panel. And it may be it for Dalton Collins, guys. 2+ hours after the start of this race, he had clearly thought that that was the moment to make the move. Got loose on his own, put it in the fence hard, and in the blink of an eye, Dalton Collins' night is done.
What a heartbreak here as we're going to ride on board or see the replay of this. He looks to the inside, just gets a little squirrely, makes contact with, of course, Noah Bits, and then just hard into the outside wall.
There's a big overcorrection at the end there, but I liked what he did. He almost did a sort of a road course switchback to get back at Bits. He got to the inside, but he just got pinched a little bit and lost it. It's just so easy to happen when you're running a little bit different of a line than what you're used to, when you're trying to get aggressive, when you're trying to fit into that little tiny hole that's finally been offered to you, and he just completely, well, not completely, he overcooked it a little bit, and there were very, very disastrous consequences. And now Noah Bitts is in complete control here. Let's ride on board. Like I said, there was just that hole open. I'm sure he's full throttling it there basically to get as much momentum as possible. And it was just too much, an overcorrection and a hard hit into the wall. And that is so disappointing. Dalton Collins is out and Matthew Long's on pit road now.
So Long's going to be down pit road, and now Bitts the clear favorite in this one, 7.5 seconds ahead of Chris Wilhite in second, meaning that Bitts really doesn't need, I think, to worry about defending the undercut too much, right? I think that if that battle had continued and Collins had pitted, he would have had to come down pit road again. Putting yourself down a lap early in a pit cycle is a risky move. I don't think Bitts has to do that. He could wait until everybody else decides to come down pit road. Piccoli's in pit road. Long just now exiting the pit lane as well. But again, a majority of the cars have yet to pit. You might think most everybody's pitted with all of the cars off the lead lap. Only 6 on the lead lap right now, but we're still waiting on a majority of the field to come down pit road for the final time tonight. And what a way to take the air out of the balloon, shall you say. It's heartbreak for Collins, and I think heartbreak for those looking for a wild end of the race. Doesn't mean there's not a lot to fight for still. Look at this battle. Garaguzzo on the inside, to the outside rather, of Bento. You got Garaguzzo defending down low, trying to deal with lap traffic. That's Brooks Durding coming back around them. So there's going to be a lot of big differences in speed. Cars on fresh tires and old tires, guys, and I'm holding my breath every single time they close in on each other, because I mean, a lap around here is chaotic enough, let alone when you get a race car that's a second and a half quicker than you. You got to be really careful if we're going to survive a possible first green flag cycle of the night.
You certainly have to be so careful here, especially on your pit entry. You're trying to go from 145 to 150 miles an hour down to 35 miles an hour, so it's going to be a very tricky pit road entrance when you get things rolling.
And every driver on the lead lap is just going to be waiting, like you said, until the last possible moment, until that fuel reads one lap to go. That's when you can come down. You can't come down any earlier than that. It is such a risk for anybody who's on the lead lap. Naslund hopes that a caution doesn't come out, rather, because he's hoping that his strategy works out here to get to the lead. But he's going to have trouble when it all cycles out, because he's going to be on he's on 7-lap-old tires right now, so he's going to be on 60-lap-older tires than everybody else in the field, when he likely will cycle to the front, but he's going to have a very difficult time once everybody else comes in and they're back on offense.
Looking at some other cars trying to work through their field. Obviously, Van de Sant, fresh tires. He's, going ham on the inside, passing cars left and right. Trying to get around Neil Phelps, a lapped car right now. But, Van de Sant, again, somebody else who was a top 3 car, has a mistake, gets into the outside wall, an unforced error, really. Wrecks himself out of this race. Dalton Collins, P2 car, wrecks himself out of the race. I mean, for as good as Bitts has been, he could have been in a very different situation right now. He could have had 2 more cars all over him, and instead, I think it goes to show you how good Bitts has been, Taylor, that those 2 cars felt like they needed to drive it that hard and that much on the limit that they ended up wrecking themselves just to try to compete with him.
It certainly shows that here tonight at Bristol, where we saw with Noah Bitts. He's been having a very smooth and consistent car. Yes, he has made mistakes and has almost thrown away early in the race, but he is there to capitalize on, of course, making sure others make mistakes, and he is still out in front in a dominant fashion here tonight at Bristol as we're approaching 50 laps to go.
And the only thing that Bitts wants is to go green all the way to the end. He does not want a caution to come out, because Wilhite has had short run speed. Garaguzzo has had insane short run speed. Bento even has had short run speed. Boudinot, who would get back on the lead lap, has had short run speed. Bitts has 2, but he's also been swallowed up in a short run, and he hasn't been passed on a long run ever tonight. So that's the last thing he wants. He wants us to go green the rest of the night. He does not want a late race yellow, and he especially doesn't want a green-white checker, because if we get like a 1 or 2 lap run to the end, Garaguzzo and Wilhite have been so strong on those short bursts on the restarts that I'd be very worried if I was Noah Bitts in that situation.
You're just waiting for it to go wrong at this point, right? Seems like it's in control, and now you're worried about the things that are out of your control. You know, what's going to happen? Does somebody cause an incident in this race? You know, does somebody have an issue in front of you? Does somebody clear the right way, right? Does somebody come up on you? I mean, you're worried about everything that you can't control, and not necessarily a great thing to be thinking about when you're a driver. Of course, could always be worse. You could have been the guy that wrecked out 330 laps ago, but Bit still needs to stay sharp here. He's about to lap Nick Nevin, who's currently the P6 car on the racetrack.
Just shows the pace that Noah Bitts has had all night long as he's about to put the 6th place car 1 lap down. 5 cars left to be on the lead lap. Of course, soon to be 4 because Luis Figueroa is currently right up in front of Nick Nevin. So we could have 4 cars on the lead lap here before this cycle of pit stops kicks off with Noah Bitts, because he is going to be having to come down pits road here pretty soon. He's been out there on the circuit for 133 laps. So I had to say in another 10, maybe a little bit less, he's going to have to come down pit road.
It's just stretching the fuel tanks for as long as possible. I think the fuel tanks are a little bit bigger than we expected. I expected the stints to be a little bit shorter, but these drivers have done a better job, I guess, of just saving a little bit more fuel. The setups that they've put on these vehicles have been far less fuel hungry than I thought. I did not think that this long of a stint was going to be possible tonight, but yeah, there's probably still 10 more laps in the tank for Bitts, maybe even 15. He might get to a 150 lap stint with how the yellows have shaken out here, and he won't even have to stop before then. 7 seconds now. He continues to expand his lead. He might have a 10-second lead in 15 laps time before he comes down pit road, and he's still going to be in complete control of the race.
That's what he wants. Just get to the end of this race. Slow car now. Mitch Strudowski, I think maybe coming to pit road in the number 5 machine. He pulled off quite aggressively. Actually, doesn't appear to be yielding to pit yet, unless he missed the pit road entry, which may have been what happened. But he pulled down very aggressively, nearly spun the race car out. I think he came down on the wrong side, forgetting which end he needed to pit on this 1-lane pit procedure. So Drudowski is going to lose a little bit of time, I think, by that misfire. You just saw him there to the right-hand side of your screen coming to pit road. And look at this absolute mess that Bitts has to deal with right now. And ironically enough, he's the slowest car on screen.
That's going to be a big problem for Noah Bitts. He has to give way. Even though he might lose a little bit of time on some of his competitors, he has to make sure he does not get caught up in other people's mess, because as he starts to slow down, he lets all of those drivers by. They will get one of their laps back here as they continue to battle on and race their way through. They're coming up to the slowed number 14 of Alan Pajara, who is currently now stuck to the bottom of the racetrack as they work their way through. Big checkup on that inside lane.
Oh, the 6 is all over the place. On the high line, 3 wide with the 14, but the 14 is going to be able to get out of the way. Alan Pahari was involved in a caution earlier with one of the lead lap cars. He's not involved this time. He backs out of it, but that car, 14 car, I'm sure was worrying Noah Bitts as much as it's been worrying me, but he's through. He's found a little bit of calm track. He's just got Figueroa in front of him, and that's going to be a far more straightforward lapped car pass, I think. He's going to have a little bit of a break here. He's not going to have a break for long, because, again, he's got to think about bringing it down pit road. He has to bring it down pit road. Can't make it to the end, but he's just waiting for as long as possible, and he's both hoping that the caution doesn't come out and that it does come out, because he doesn't have to make a green flag pit stop and risk a mistake.
And that's why I don't think we're surprised that he's pushing it all the way to the end, right? He really, at this point, has the race in his control. He doesn't want to come down and get stuck off of the lead lap if an incident were to happen. So, and a lot of people push it along, right? Not just him. I mean, we've only really seen a couple of cars pit from the top 10, top 15. Naslin's been in, Long's been in. That's it as far as cars running in the top 15. We've also seen Dirting down, Piccoli's been down pit road, Klein, but again, those are cars multiple laps off of the lead lap at that point. A majority of your race leaders aren't laps down because of the strategy. They're just laps down because Noah Bitts has incredible pace late in this race. He's now been out there for 146 laps on the tires. That's got to make you nervous, right? longest run prior to this was the 70 to 80 range. So these cars, for those who haven't pitted, driving as bad as they have all night.
These tires are absolutely screaming right now, especially for drivers like Bits, Wilhite, Garagusa, and Bento, who are just absolutely wondering when they will come down pit road and top off a little bit of fuel and also make sure they have some fresh Goodyear tires in order to continue on racing, as Chris Wilhite has said he's going to be pitting.
Three wide, you see that bright blue car in the middle, or at least you saw that bright blue car in the middle. Naslin, that's the driver. Well, he's not going to take over the lead anymore. He would have previously taken over the lead as he gets loose, but Matthew Long, once all of our leaders come down pit road, he's going to be the driver who takes over the lead of this race. I wonder, are there enough laps? If Bits does go a lap down, he will go a lap down too long. 28 laps to go. Do the math. He'll probably be close to a second a lap faster. I think he will be able to unlap himself and make the move again, but these are all thoughts that are going through these drivers' heads. Do I have enough time to drive back through the field if I've waited this long to come down pit road?
Going to be a tall order right here you have to keep an eye on as we're just waiting to see. We see a couple of more of the lap traffic now jockeying for position, as we see Jay Collins, Wesley Pistol, and of course Alexander Vandersat, who are working their way through around the circuit, just trying to get to the end. Some of them trying to pick up a couple of other valuable positions.
Wilhite said he was pitting, but that was a lie. He is distinctly not pitted, so I don't know if he's waiting for a gap in the lap traffic or if he was trying to throw Bits off of his game or what, but no green flag pit stops up front yet. Wilhite's still trucking along out there, as is everybody else in the top four.
Yeah, I wonder if he was trying to trick somebody else into coming down pit road as well, or what the story behind that one was. But yeah, very clearly said I'd be coming down to the pit lane and hasn't, and he's got a decent enough gap on track. I don't think you're going to find a bunch more real estate than he already has to try to pit. Remember, it's going to be a consequential stop for him. He's only 0.7 of a second ahead of Mike Garaguso, right? That's going to be a very tight battle for second and third as this race comes down to its closing laps. Those spots very much still hanging in the balance. As they've now passed 155 on this run. You can see side-by-side racing action. This is right behind Bitch, your race leader. Figueroa on the outside. How about that split? 3 wide with Nebben to the inside, and David Hall just had to hold her still.
David Hall was like, oh no, what just happened here? As he had to deal with a split that was not a fun one as they continue to work their way around the circuit. Nebben really putting the pressure on Lewis as they continue to fight for these final positions. 20 laps to go.
I'm just amazed that Nebben saved that. He lost it in the same way that we've seen a lot of drivers do. That's the way Dalton Collins lost this race. But Nebben was able to save it, didn't bring the caution out, and that was a remarkable save, and he's still trucking along, but he's on 150 lap old tires right now. He is really struggling, but that just makes that save even more impressive. He did that on 150 lap old tires.
And the battle rolls on. More traffic coming through. This time it's Pacioli on the inside. The number 6 car scored in 13th position, some 3 laps down, in fact. He'll be able to get on through, and here comes the 8 car down on the bottom as well, as Matthew Long from the number 5 spot is going to come by as well. Long, one of the many drivers who did decide to come down pit road. We know Long has been able to pit, has enough fuel to get to the end of the race, and of course has made up so much time now that if the cars who have yet to pit do indeed still need to come in, they're not going to have enough time to make up the time that they're giving away to Matthew Long. So at this juncture, could they possibly go more than 177 to the end? That's Garaguso into the fence.
Garagusa goes into the fence, and that will shut the door as they continue on to work their way around the circuit. He's currently holding up Alexander Vanderstat. He's 31 laps down, 4 laps back from his next competitor, but still just kind of threw him off his game as they'll go back to the bottom of the racetrack.
I think Wilhite might be saving fuel. Our producer Tyler Maxon brought up the possibility. You can see how slow Wilhite's going. Is he trying to just save fuel and make it to the end here? Garagouso maybe pushing a little bit harder. He's actually bringing down the gap to Bits, so maybe Bits is doing the same thing. Willite might be doing the same thing as well. But if you're saving fuel to get to the end, you're a second a lap slower than Matthew Long, who's 13 seconds behind with 13 laps to go. Even if you don't pit, Matthew Long might be fast enough to take this win on pace.
And that could be quite the change in this race if this one can continue to shake out as it's playing. Again, Bits, Garagouso, Willhite, 1, 2, and 3. They all pitted 166 laps ago here from the virtual Bristol Motor Speedway. By far and large, the longest green flag run of the night will take us to 10 laps to go in this race. Again, Willhite still needs to get around Naslund. Naslund kind of the bumper between the cars scored in second and third right now.
And Naslund is really trying to put the pressure and try to see if he can get his way up through the field. He's currently big hit, though, and a little bit of a hip check to Garagouso, as that was a close call indeed. That'll bring Willhite back up into the mix as they come off of turn number 4, but a close call. We could have seen a caution in the closing stages.
And Garagoosed it a little bit too hard on the exit. He's been doing that quite a bit. He's been getting loose on the exit of 2 and on the exit of 4 for that matter. It's understandable. These tires are 170 laps old and he gets close to the wall again. He might be the caution. If he has another one of those moments with how old these tires are, there's a point where you just can't save it. But he's been able to save it so far. He's actually been so loose, though, that fuel-saving Chris Willite's actually been able to catch up to the back of him.
At a change for position number 4, Matthew Long, fresh tires, has been able to get around Miguel Bento. So Long, now the highest running driver of those who has pitted in this race. He came down pit road some 60 laps ago before he did decide to come down and get service. Matthew Long was scored in position number 6. So this is a net win for Long, having decided to come down and pit for the fresh tires.
I don't think he's going fast enough, though. He's only like half a second a lap faster as opposed to 1 second a lap faster now. So he's not going fast enough. Unless the guys in front of him run out of fuel, the charge forward hasn't been strong enough.
5 laps to go as you're on board with Noah Bits, and he is just really trying to save his tires, save his fuel, see if he can stretch it all the way to the end here. As Barney the Flagman gave them the big high five a few moments ago. Now 3 laps to go.
Lap traffic coming up off of the inside line, but he yielded way, and the big thing in favor of Noah Bits here is that he does not have a ton of traffic around him. Garagouso, Willhite, they are still hoping to stay ahead of the charging Matthew Long, but Long's speed has been neutered in all of the lap traffic he's been dealing with. He just can't run his line. It has checked him up way too much, and there is 1 lap to go for Noah Bits. Started this race on pole position. He'll lead an astounding 453 laps of it, and Noah Bits wins the Bristol 500.
What a drive, and I gotta say, he kind of had us a little bit of concern, but of course he was able to save enough to get to the end. A great, stellar performance for Noah Bits.
And it's just such an accomplishment to be able to make it to the end of the race. You saw the saving that Bits and Willite especially were doing. 178 lap stint at the end of the race. It's not only a testament to them for being able to save all that fuel, save that tire life, but it's a testament to the rest of the field. We had a little bit of a caution fest for the first 300 laps or so, and then we went completely clean and green to the end of this thing. And nobody's more deserving than Noah Bits. He tripped over himself a little bit at the start of the race, but he recovered. He didn't let that get by him. His opponents all eliminated themselves by their own mistakes, and the strongest driver won tonight.
Absolutely. You can see the rest of the drivers on the podium join him. It's the Dynamite Garagouso in second. Number 4, Chris Willhite in third. But Noah Bits will stand on top of the podium as the winner of the 2022 iRacing Bristol 500 under the lights here in Thunder Valley. What a run, 178 laps to the end of this race. We take a look at your iRacing full race results. Final margin of victory, 5.7 seconds in favor of Bits ahead of Garaguso and Wilhite. Matthew Long, the first car on fresh tires, drove his way all the way up to fourth. Again, Annette Gain decided to come down from pit road when he was P6, so it worked out all right. Not enough, though, to get the race win. Miguel Bento will be the final car to finish on the lead lap in the number 5 position, and then it's Figuera, Nebin, Nasland, O'Hara, and Buneau, the top 10.
In 11th will be Wesley Pistol, followed by Clayton Hoffman in 12th. Timmy Paciolo will come home in 13th with Brooks Dirting in 14th. Jake Collins in the 15th position with Austin Fitzgerald in 16th. Pedro Henriquez will come home in 17th with Jacob Klein in 18th. Mitch Trunowski will come home in 19th. David Hall rounds out your top 20.
And now we start to get into the used car lot a little bit. Drivers who got heavy damage. Alan Bahari and Ronnie Kuritz never really moved their way up to the front. And Alexander Van de Sant is going to be Alexander Van de Sad, 23rd place after losing it on his own. Neil Phelps started from the back. Technically advanced 13 positions, so I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. And then Steve Richard and Jerry LePage ran into trouble. Johnny McNamara got erased. Dalton Collins could have won this race, but made a mistake. And Justin Campbell and Cy Bowen, both were eliminated fairly early. They're 200-something laps down.
And here's where it really went rough for the likes of Hogan, Martell, Watson, Leroy, Richardson, Quint, and Kralik. All of these drivers did not make it into the final 200, and Bristol got the best of them. All things considered, though, this 500 lap race at Bristol gets done under the 3-hour benchmark on the stopwatch, and there were certainly yellows. I'm not even necessarily going to say early, right? I mean, Taylor, we started the race with a long 70-plus lap green flag run. You had a couple of short runs. You had some attrition. You had big names rack out, but to counter that point, a lot of long, good, clean green flag racing as well in this event.
It certainly was, and that was an exciting thing to see. We love to see a mix of drama, don't get us wrong here at RaceSpotTV, but we also love to see good, hard, clean green flag racing, and this by far had to be the best Bristol race I've ever seen on iRacing.
But of course, there is a lot more to come this season as the iRacing special events calendar rolls on. Of course, if you enjoyed the action and want to take on Bristol for yourself, you'll still have plenty of opportunities over the course of the weekend. But Joey, coming up next, at least for us here on RaceSpotTV, is the Bathurst 1000.
And that will be literally tomorrow here on RaceSpotTV. So make sure to tune in September 17th. That is, in fact, tomorrow here on the East Coast. Tomorrow is only 9 minutes away. So go to bed early, wake up at 8:30 a.m. ET or 12:30 p.m. UTC. Tune in for the Bathurst 1000. That's a crazy race, and that was a little bit of an endurance race, but multiply that by more than 2 because it's 1,000 kilometers tomorrow, and that is going to be an absolutely insane run up and over and down the mountain at Bathurst. I'm probably going to wake up early. I want to watch that.
I think it times out really well, right? If you go to bed now, you got about 9 hours, right? So get your 8 hours. You got an hour, get some breakfast ready, and then join us for the Bathurst 1000 right here on RaceSpotTV. And of course, if you're interested in competing in that event, we'll be covering the top split for that one. You're going to have plenty of opportunities, though, over the course of the weekend to compete both at Bathurst and here at Bristol. But until then, that is it for us here tonight for iRacing's virtual Bristol Motor Speedway. So on behalf of the entire team at RaceSpot and for your broadcast crew tonight, for Tyler Axon downstairs, for Joey Tevin, Taylor Burris, and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank all of you for tuning in and congratulate Noah Bitts as the winner of the iRacing Bristol 500. The iRacing special events calendar rolls on, and we'll catch you next time right here on RaceSpot TV.